Chapter 251. In a secluded corner of the capital, the old man appeared. Lin Xuanji leaned forward and gave him a thumbs up. "Old man, you've got some skills. You chased away a divine dragon in a couple of rounds." The old man rolled his eyes. "Dragons differ in strength as well. That dragon belongs to the Azure Dragon lineage. Although it's an adult Azure Dragon, it has yet to reach its peak. Furthermore, it has just laid an egg and its essence energy is greatly damaged. That's why its strength has decreased significantly." "Then why didn't you kill that Azure Dragon earlier on?" Lin Xuanji rubbed his hands. "Since we're already enemies, I might as well kill it and get rid of all future troubles." "Kid, you make it sound so easy with your lips," the old man sneered. "Do you know what the consequences will be if you kill that Azure Dragon? Rivers of blood will flow in the capital of Great Zhou and no one will be spared. That's considered light. In the worst case, the entire north region of primordial chaos would be littered with corpses and piled up into mountains." "Old man, don't scare me," Lin Xuanji was shocked. "Scare you? Back then, that..." The old man stopped mid-sentence and shook his head. "Forget it, let's not talk about this anymore. F***ck. Lin Xuanji's ears perked up to listen intently when the old man stopped talking. The old man waved it off. "Furthermore, do you think that the Azure Dragon came by itself? There's another dragon in the dark who has yet to appear. That dragon is the true expert." Lin Xuanji frowned and asked, "Old man, I used a minor transference talisman. How did that Azure Dragon find this place?" "The three of you ate the dragon egg. That's equivalent to eating a dragon. Although that dragon isn't fully formed yet, how much energy does it contain?" The old man said, "The only way to avoid the Azure Dragon's senses is to refine and absorb the energy within your body completely. Mine was easy. I only ate a bit of egg juice. I'll probably be able to refine it in a month or so," Lin Xuanji gloated. "That Su Zimo and that dog are in for it. They ate so much, ha." The old man pondered for a moment and said, "Go remind him not to leave the capital of Great Zhou before he refines the essence energy of the dragon egg in his body." "Ah!" Lin Xuanji was stunned. "Old man, you're not planning to stay here forever, are you?" "Of course not." The old man shook his head and said, "When you finish refining the dragon egg's essence, we will return to the central continent. The primordial battlefield will open in another 2 years. I have to go back and prepare in advance." Tianhuang mainland was divided into 4 regions, 3 seas, and 1 continent. The 4 regions referred to the Eastern region, Western region, Southern region, and Northern region. The Great Zhou dynasty was located in the northern region of the Infinite region. One of the continents referred to the Middle continent. Located in the center of Tianhuang mainland, it was vast and was even larger than the other 4 regions combined. If a Foundation establishment cultivator were to travel on his sword at full speed, he would not be able to cross the entire northern region of Tianhuang mainland even if he exhausted his lifespan, let alone enter the Middle continent. Perfected being Jin Dan was faster and had a longer lifespan. However, no one would waste their precious time on the road in order to head to the Middle continent. Furthermore, the journey was fraught with danger and demon beasts roamed the mountains and rivers. One would most likely die before they even reached the Middle continent. Only by reaching nascent soul realm would one have the ability to protect themselves and attempt to cross the 4 regions and 1 continent. In the restaurant, Su Zimo listened to the discussions around him while eating the food he ordered. Suddenly, a person sat down opposite the table. Su Zimo raised his head and was slightly stunned. For some reason, Su Zimo could vaguely sense that there was something wrong with Lin Xuanji's words just now. "Alright, that's all I'll tell you." Lin Xuanji stood up and was about to leave. Su Zimo looked at Lin Xuanji's cheeks and said with a fake smile, "Fellow Taoist, your cheeks have gotten fatter after not seeing you for half a day." Lin Xuanji's expression froze as he grit his teeth. "I'm happy to." With that, he flicked his sleeves and left while mumbling, "Damned old man." He didn't hold back at all. When he heard that, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he suddenly realized that there was something wrong with Lin Xuanji's words just now. Even if that old man isn't here, you'll be safer in the capital. That was what Lin Xuanji had said earlier on. How did Lin Xuanji know that the mysterious expert was an old man? None of the cultivators outside the capital caught a clear glimpse of the mysterious expert's appearance. Coincidence? Was it a casual remark? Or? Su Zimo's eyes flickered in deep thought. Chapter 252. The streets of the capital were bustling and bustling. The earth-shattering battle outside the city did not affect the people in the city. Instead, it became a topic of conversation. Su Zimo left the restaurant and walked aimlessly in the bustling crowd, thinking about his future plans. Since he had decided to stay in the capital, the first thing he had to do was find a place to stay. Su Zimo would have to stay at this place for at least 2 to 3 years. It would not be able to cope, it had to be quiet and have a pleasant environment suitable for cultivation. Su Zimo asked around and headed straight for Sky Treasure Pavilion. The fastest way to find a place in the capital that he liked was to post missions at Sky Treasure Pavilion. Most of the people who entered Sky Treasure Pavilion in the capital of Yen country were Qi refinement warriors. It was rare for a Foundation Establishment cultivator to appear in a year. However, Foundation Establishment cultivators could be seen everywhere in Sky Treasure Pavilion of the Great Zhou dynasty. In fact, there were even many perfected Jin Dan. Although Su Zimo was a mid-stage Foundation Establishment cultivator, he was inconspicuous in the crowd. After entering the main hall, Su Zimo came before a cabinet and a beautiful maidservant walked up. She was dressed in a thin veil that revealed her petite figure and curves. The beautiful maidservant revealed a sweet smile and asked, "Fellow Taoist, what can I do for you?" Su Zimo asked, "I want to buy a house in the city. Do you have any recommendations?" Fellow Taoist, the best houses in the capital are mostly located on both sides of Jishui River. When you're bored of cultivation, you can open the windows and see the clear river. It's refreshing. The beautiful maidservant took out a map and pointed at the houses on both sides of the river, introducing them with a smile. Su Zimo nodded and chose a house by the shore, saying, "Let's do it here." "Do you have a Sky Treasure badge?" the beautiful maidservant asked. Su Zimo hesitated for a moment before shaking his head. He did have a Sky Treasure gold badge in his storage bag. However, that badge was extraordinary and would attract quite a bit of trouble each time he took it out. Now that they were in the capital, Su Zimo did not want to have anything to do with Ji Yaoxue and incur the enmity of the Emperor of Great Zhou. Back then, the scene of Dai Su escorting Ji Yaoxue out of Pingyang town was still vivid in his mind. Su Zimo could clearly feel Dai Su's killing intent towards him. The beautiful maid smiled and said, "If you don't have the Sky Treasure badge, the total price of this house is 100,000 upper-grade spirit stones." "Yes, 100,000, Su Zimo nodded. Just as he was about to agree, his expression changed. He looked at the beautiful maid in disbelief and asked seriously, 100,000 pieces of high-grade spirit stones? Yes. The beautiful maid's smile didn't fade. So expensive? Su Zimo was secretly shocked. If it was 100,000 mid-grade spirit stones, he could still afford it. However, 100,000 superior-grade spirit stones were equivalent to 10 million middle-grade spirit stones. He only had 200,000 middle-grade spirit stones left in his storage bag, and it was far from enough. The beautiful maid explained, "The spirit chi in the capital is much richer than outside, and you'll be able to cultivate with half the effort." Pausing for a moment, the beautiful maid continued, "Furthermore, apart from some special areas, killing and fighting are prohibited in the capital. If anyone attacks without permission, they'll definitely be killed by the imperial army of the capital. Even perfected Jin Dan is no exception. Therefore, you don't have to worry about your safety when cultivating in the capital." Su Zimo remained silent. Even if there were no downsides, he couldn't afford it. "Why don't we change to a more secluded corner? It'll be cheaper." After a while, the beautiful maid could tell that Su Zimo was troubled and suggested, "Forget it." Su Zimo waved it off and asked in a deep voice, "I'll rent this house for 3 years. How much is it?" The beautiful maid smiled. A year's rent is 3,000 superior-grade spirit stones. That's 300,000 middle-grade spirit stones. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. Prior to this, he truly hadn't expected that the houses in the capital would be so expensive. I'll rent it for a year first. Su Zimo took out all the middle-grade spirit stones in his storage bag and sold some of the spirit weapons and elixirs in the blood-robed youth's storage bag on the spot, barely managing to gather 300,000 middle-grade spirit stones. After handing over the spirit stones, Sky Treasure Pavilion was extremely efficient as they registered it swiftly and sent someone to bring Su Zimo to his residence. Su Zimo walked around the house and was satisfied. Although he no longer had any spirit stones on him and his future cultivation would be a problem, he was in no hurry. Su Zimo intended to open a weapon workshop here and kill two birds with one stone. On the one hand, he could earn spirit stones from weapon refinement to supplement his daily cultivation and expenditure. On the other hand, Su Zimo had already mastered the art of tempering, and with the image of weapon refinement left behind by Hakudojin, he could make use of the weapon workshop to practice continuously and truly improve his skills. Su Zimo was not only a weapon refinement master, he was also a sword formation master. This meant that the deeper his attainments in weapon refinement, the greater the increase in his combat strength. That was because Su Zimo could refine flying swords of higher grades, and the sword formations he created would naturally be stronger. Furthermore, he had once obtained a secret sword formation skill from Hakudojin called the Candlelight Sword Formation, but he had never had the chance to use it. In the remaining 2.5 years, Su Zimo intended to raise his weapon refinement standards and create a new set of high-grade flying swords. 2.5 years was enough for him to refine the essence energy of the dragon egg within his body. Before the sect competition, Su Zimo would truly be reborn and his strength would increase tremendously. Su Zimo left the place temporarily with Night Spirit and headed towards the northwest corner of the Great Zhou dynasty. That was Yongqing City, a place where people from all walks of life gathered. Many elixir and weapon workshops were opened there as well. Su Zimo intended to take a look around and check out the market. Although Su Zimo believed that his weapon refinement skills were not weaker than others, if he did not understand the market and the location was not in the downtown area, he might not be able to open his weapon workshop. Before long, Su Zimo arrived at Yongqing City. Yongqing City was divided into many streets. Some of the streets were dedicated to elixir refinement while others were dedicated to weapon refinement. Su Zimo looked around as he walked. The weapon workshops on both sides of the streets were lined up one after another. Some of them were opened by individuals such as Liu Clan's weapon workshop and Chen Seven's weapon workshop. Most of them were weapon workshops with sect logos such as Fian Weapon Workshop, Scarlet Rainbow Weapon Workshop, Golden Wave Weapon Workshop and True Fire Weapon Workshop. Among them, True Fire Weapon Workshop was opened by one of the 5 major sects, True Fire Sect. It was also the largest shop with the best business in Yongqing City. Most of the other weapon workshops only had 2 or 3 people in front of them. However, there was a long queue in front of True Fire Weapon Workshop. True Fire Sect was one of the 5 major sects to begin with and had the highest achievements in elixir and weapon refinement within the Great Zhou dynasty. Every year, True Fire Sect would take up at least half of the 10 spots on the elixir and weapon rankings. It was reasonable for True Fire Weapon Workshop to have such good business in the capital. Su Zimo walked over and joined the queue as well. Chapter 253. Ordinary flying swords could be purchased at Sky Treasure Pavilion. However, if one wanted to refine a flying sword that was most suitable for them, the size, weight and materials of the flying sword would have to be customized according to their requirements. It was even more so for defensive spirit weapons such as robes and inner armor. Everyone had a different physique and naturally had to be customized. Su Zimo had already observed most of it while queuing. Typically, a custom-made middle-grade spirit weapon would require 3,000 to 5,000 middle-grade spirit stones and 3 sets of materials. A custom-made superior-grade spirit weapon would require 3,000 to 5,000 superior-grade spirit stones and 10 sets of materials. After a long time, it was finally Su Zimo's turn. Su Zimo pondered for a moment and asked, "Fellow Taoist, I can understand preparing materials for custom-made spirit weapons, but why do you need to prepare 3 sets? You need to prepare 10 sets for a custom-made superior-grade spirit weapon?" When he heard that, the disciple of True Fire sect sneered, "Are you playing dumb with me? Which weapon refinement master would dare to guarantee that they can refine a superior-grade spirit weapon with a single set of materials? Do you think that weapon refinement masters have a 100% success rate for spirit gathering? The higher the grade of the spirit weapon, the lower the success rate of spirit gathering. Naturally, one would have to prepare more materials. Even so, we're taking a risk." Everyone from True Fire sect in the weapon workshop looked at Su Zimo with obvious mockery. This person knows nothing and he's here asking for a custom-made spirit weapon. I wonder where this country bumpkin came from. He hasn't seen the world. I reckon that this lad is poor and is just here to join in the fun. When he heard those discussions, Su Zimo smiled and did not rebut, continuing to ask, "What's the price of a custom-made supreme-grade spirit weapon?" Huh. A series of laughter sounded outside True Fire Weapon Workshop. I told you, this person is just here to join in the fun. He's even putting on an act as though he knows everything. Custom-made supreme-grade spirit weapon? To think that he can even ask something like that. I'm dying of laughter. Someone lamented, "How ignorant." Su Zimo looked calmly at the group of laughing True Fire sect disciples opposite him with a faint smile on his face. A cultivator standing behind Su Zimo seemed to be unable to bear it and explained in a low voice, "Fellow Taoist, supreme-grade spirit weapons are not custom-made. Even if someone prepared 100 sets of materials, no refiner would dare to take it. Refining supreme-grade spirit weapons requires luck and opportunity. The failure rate is too high." Su Zimo nodded. That person continued, "If a weapon refinement master can refine a supreme-grade spirit weapon in his lifetime, it's enough for him to be famous throughout the great Zhou dynasty. Moreover, the price of a supreme-grade spirit weapon was not fixed. If it was put in an auction house, it could be sold for at least 500,000 high-grade spirit stones. If someone bids for it, it's possible to sell it for millions." There were a total of 3 spiritual inscriptions on a superior-grade spiritual weapon. At most, it could be sold for 5,000 superior-grade spiritual stones. However, supreme-grade spirit weapons were more than 100 times more expensive than superior-grade spirit weapons, even though they only had one more spirit pattern. The gap between them could be imagined. Don't waste time here. Get lost. The manager of True Fire Weapon Workshop walked over and waved at Su Zimo, not concealing the disgust in his eyes. Su Zimo was not enraged and merely smiled. "Manager, I believe that you'll definitely regret this one day." With that said, Su Zimo turned and left. After checking out the market, Su Zimo already had an idea of what was going on. Furthermore, Su Zimo was even more certain that his weapon workshop would become the largest in the capital and even trample True Fire Weapon Workshop beneath his feet. Before he walked far, Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he swept his gaze across a corner not far away. There was a girl around 14 or 15 years old curled up on the ground. She was filthy from head to toe and her clothes were tattered. Her yellow hair was messy and her face was covered in dirt. The only thing that was clear was her eyes. A cold gust of wind blew and the little girl shrank her neck, pursing her lips and shivering. For some reason, Su Zimo was reminded of Xiaoning when he saw this little girl. Back when Xiaoning left, she was only a few years older than this little girl. Su Zimo sighed internally and bought a few buns nearby. Wrapping them in oil paper, he handed them to the little girl and said gently, "Eat up." A hint of fear flashed through the little girl's eyes. She hesitated and did not take the oil paper. Su Zimo did not insist either. Placing the oil paper beside the little girl, he took out a green robe from his storage bag and draped it over the little girl before standing up. That action made the little girl less wary of Su Zimo. Reaching out with her filthy hands, she tried to pick up a bun. Su Zimo was about to leave when Night Spirit suddenly moved in his embrace. A dark little head popped out and glanced at the little girl. Before Su Zimo could say anything, Night Spirit suddenly jumped out and ran in front of the little girl, sniffing at her. Ah! The little girl was shocked and the bun she had just picked up dropped to the ground. Su Zimo frowned and hurriedly pulled Night Spirit back, stuffing it into his embrace. Unlike usual, Night Spirit did not hide. Instead, it stuck its little head out and kept looking at the little girl. Su Zimo revealed an apologetic look and said softly, "Don't be afraid. It won't hurt you." The little girl did not say anything. She only glared at Su Zimo warily. Su Zimo gave a bitter smile and shook his head before turning to leave. The two of them did not know each other and had met by chance. Su Zimo was touched. On account of Xiaoning, he gave her a meal and a set of clothes. That was already the most benevolent thing he could do. Su Zimo headed back to his residence. He had not walked far when Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat and he glanced sideways. From the corner of his eye, Su Zimo caught sight of the little girl who was wrapped in his green robes, wolfing down the bun and following behind him, maintaining a certain distance. Su Zimo smiled and was not bothered. Before long, Su Zimo arrived at the entrance of Yongqing City. A large group of people surrounded the entrance of Yongqing City. Although there were many people, it was extremely quiet and one could only hear the voices of the crowd. That battle lasted for 2 days and 2 nights, causing the skies to darken and the earth to crack. Finally, the divine dragon was slain by that man and corpses were strewn all over the ground. Blood flowed like rivers in an extremely tragic manner. In the middle of the crowd, an old man with a Confucian hairstyle and long robes was telling a story eloquently. To begin with, he was a storyteller who roamed the world and made up stories that could not be taken seriously. Su Zimo had heard many of them. However, for some reason, when he heard the words of the old man just now, Su Zimo could not help but recall the tragic sea of bones in the periphery of the primordial ruin. Su Zimo shook his head and did not think too much about it. He merely lamented internally, "The divine dragon has just appeared and someone is already making up stories about it. That's pretty convincing." Right then, someone raised his voice. "Storyteller, you've just told us this part in the morning." "I did, but some people didn't hear it," the old man smiled. Su Zimo paused in his tracks and turned around slowly to look at the old man in the crowd. Did the old man mean something or was it just a casual remark? Chapter 254. As the crowd dispersed, the old storyteller closed his fan slowly and hid the wooden stick in his sleeves. In the midst of the crowd, Su Zimo blinked. By the time he looked again, the old man had already vanished. Frowning, Su Zimo pondered for a moment before heading back to his residence. Right after Su Zimo left Yongqing City, the old storyteller appeared out of nowhere and wandered to an empty corner. Lin Xuanji was standing there, bored. When he saw the old man, Lin Xuanji hurried forward and asked softly with an expectant gaze, "Old man, how was it? Did you see anything?" "I couldn't tell. That lad's fate was changed by someone and his trajectory is all messed up." The old man shook his head. Lin Xuanji asked again, "What about that black dog? Can you tell what race it is?" "It shouldn't be a dog," the old man frowned. "Duh, I know it's not a dog too." Lin Xuanji rolled his eyes. "Old man, you can't tell its background even with your knowledge?" The old man narrowed his eyes and shook his head thoughtfully. "I can't say for sure. However, that black dog is truly not simple. I can sense a unique aura from it. It's very pure." "What aura?" "The aura of killing." The old man replied, "Although you've lost the chance to nurture a divine dragon this time round, if you can get your hands on that black dog, your future won't be too bad." Lin Xuanji rubbed his chin and his eyes darted around as he came up with an idea. As though he thought of something, the old man frowned in thought and murmured softly, "That girl." Along the way, Su Zimo could sense that the little girl was following behind him. A long time later, Su Zimo returned to his rented residence and stopped in his tracks, turning around. The little girl was caught off guard and a look of panic flashed through her eyes. Su Zimo strode towards the little girl. She seemed to be afraid and wanted to retreat. However, she held herself back. "Why are you following me?" Su Zimo approached and asked softly. "This is the first time someone has given me clothes to wear." The little girl blinked her big watery eyes and said timidly. Su Zimo's heart softened and he asked, "You don't have anywhere to go?" The little girl nodded. "All right, from today onwards you'll live here." Su Zimo pointed at the house behind him and said with a smile, "But I'm only renting it for a year. I can only guarantee that you can stay there for a year." "Thank you." A smile finally appeared on the little girl's face. Su Zimo brought the little girl into the house and asked casually, "My name is Su Zimo. What's your name?" "Nian Chi." The little girl's wariness toward Su Zimo had lessened a lot, and there was a trace of vitality in her voice. The house faced south with Jishui River at its back. It took up a large area and had many rooms. Nian Chi found a random room and stayed there. Su Zimo headed out and bought some clothes and food for Nian Chi, placing them in front of Nian Chi's room. After doing that, Su Zimo came to the courtyard and took out a wooden plaque from his storage bag. Since he wanted to open a weapon workshop, he had to come up with a name. Looking at the night spirit patrolling the courtyard, Su Zimo smiled and muttered to himself, "Let's call it Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop then." Using his finger as a sword, Su Zimo carved 5 words on the wooden plaque. Right then, the door behind him opened with a creak. Su Zimo turned back and saw a young girl with snow-white skin standing at the door. She was slim and elegant with exquisite features and watery eyes. Although she was young, she was already extremely beautiful. Su Zimo was slightly stunned. After washing away the stains on Nian Chi's face, it was as though he had turned into a different person. However, for some reason, Nian Chi's hair was still yellow and curly like withered grass and tree branches. It did not have any luster and was incompatible with his fair face. Su Zimo did not think too much about it and merely thought that it was because Nian Chi had suffered too much over the years and his body was weak. He would return to normal after recuperating for a year or so. "Young master, what are you doing?" Nian Chi walked over and looked at the wooden plaque in Su Zimo's hands, murmuring softly, "Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop, are you intending to open a weapon workshop here, young master?" "That's right," Su Zimo nodded. Nian Chi's lips moved as though he wanted to say something but stopped. "Speak if you have something to say," Su Zimo smiled. Nian Chi said, "Although I don't know how to refine weapons, I've been wandering around the city all these years. The place you're at is suitable for living but not for opening a weapon workshop. No one will come here." Cultivators who were familiar with the capital would definitely head to Yongqing City to customize spirit weapons because all the weapon workshops in the capital were located on that street. As for cultivators who were not familiar with the capital, they would head to Yongqing City if they asked around. In Nian Chi's opinion, no one would visit Su Zimo's weapon workshop here. Su Zimo was not worried at all as he smiled. "My weapon workshop is different, don't worry." Nian Chi nodded as though he understood. Su Zimo pointed to a chair at the side. "Sit. Hold this stone and let me take a look." There was a stone the size of a baby's fist on the table. It was a spirit testing stone that Su Zimo had just bought. Nian Chi reached out and held the spirit testing stone. After a while, there were no changes to the spirit testing stone. Su Zimo sighed internally. Initially, he still had a glimmer of hope that Nian Chi might have a spirit root and could enter the path of cultivation. However, he knew in his heart that the possibility was extremely low. There were many perfected beings of Jin Dan in the capital and there might even be Jinying Jinjuan. If Nian Chi had a spirit root, he would have been taken away and taken in as a disciple long ago. Now that there were no changes to the spirit testing stone, Su Zimo knew that Nian Chi was the same as him, an ordinary person without a spirit root. As though realizing something, Nian Chi said hurriedly, "Young master, although I don't have a spirit root, I'm very strong and can help you with many things. Don't chase me away. It's fine." Su Zimo shook his head. Afraid that Nian Chi would overthink, he changed the topic and asked, "You said that you're very strong. How strong? Very, very strong. Nian Qi blinked and said, previously, I didn't dare to reveal it because I was afraid that others would lock me up as a monster. Su Zimo could not help but laugh. In Su Zimo's opinion, Nian Qi was only boasting as much as possible so that she would not be chased away. She was just a little girl with thin arms and legs. How much strength could she possibly have? Su Zimo's heart skipped a beat. Wanting to tease Nian Qi, he took out the mystic gold silk armor from his storage bag and placed it gently on the table. This is a silk armor. Can you lift it up? Of course. Nian Qi nodded naturally and tugged at the corner of the mystic gold silk armor with one hand, lifting it up. It did not budge at all. Eh. Nian Qi was stunned for a moment. Su Zimo snickered internally but his expression did not change. Nian Qi stood up and frowned slightly. Looking at the mystic gold silk armor in disbelief, she lifted it with her other hand as well. When Su Zimo saw that Nian Qi was about to try again, he waved it off, afraid that the joke would be too much. Forget it. Actually, this mystic gold silk armor weighs. Su Zimo's voice came to a stop as he bounced up from his chair, dumbfounded. Nian Qi's arms were trembling and her cheeks were flushed. It was clear that she had used all her strength to lift the mystic gold silk armor off the table. Chapter 255. Even though Su Zimo seemed to be able to take out the mystic gold silk armor with a single hand with ease, the inner armor weighed at least 5,000 kilograms. Back then, Su Zimo was only able to pick up the mystic gold silk armor after he cultivated to lesser mastery of the marrow cleansing section. But now, a 14 or 15-year-old girl was able to do it. The way Su Zimo looked at Nian Qi changed gradually. This was no longer as simple as strength. Given the strength displayed by Nian Qi right now, she could even kill early-stage foundation establishment cultivators if she were to learn some killing techniques. Su Zimo's first reaction was that Nian Qi had cultivated some sort of powerful body tempering technique. However, Su Zimo immediately denied that speculation. All body tempering techniques of the human race were built on the foundation of possessing a spirit root and cultivating spirit qi. However, there was no spirit qi in Nian Qi's body at all. Strange, could there really be people born with divine strength? Su Zimo could not figure it out no matter how he thought about it. After pondering for a moment, Su Zimo took out a thin booklet from his storage bag and handed it to Nian Qi. This is the Qi condensation manual. Try cultivating it. If there's anything you don't understand, feel free to ask me. Even though Nian Qi did not have a spirit root, Su Zimo still wanted her to give it a try. Nian Qi nodded. Standing up, Su Zimo hung the signboard with the words Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop on the beam outside the residence. Young master, if there's anything you need me to do, feel free to instruct me. Nian Qi was a sensible person. She did not want to freeload here and wanted to do something as well. Sensing Nian Qi's intentions, Su Zimo pondered for a moment before saying, just take care of the customers in the future and inform me of their requests. What's the price? Nian Qi asked. Su Zimo replied, for now, we're only going to order middle-grade spirit weapons. 3,000 middle-grade spirit stones and a set of materials will do. Ah! Nian Qi's eyes widened. She had been in the capital for a long time and was familiar with some things in Yongqing City. The price set by Su Zimo was the lowest price for middle-grade spirit weapons. Most importantly, they only had to prepare a set of materials. Normally, to refine middle-grade spirit weapons required at least 3 sets of materials. Some weapon workshops even required 4 sets of materials. Just like what the True Fire sect disciple had said, no Qi refinement warrior could have a 100% success rate in spirit gathering. That was why True Fire Weapon Workshop allowed the cultivators to prepare 3 sets of materials just in case. Refining a high-grade spirit artifact had a higher probability of failure, so the cultivator had to prepare 10 sets of materials. However, Su Zimo did not have to worry about that at all. This was because the most difficult part of the refining process, spirit gathering, was not a problem for him at all. With his spirit perception, Su Zimo had a 100% success rate in spirit gathering. Right now, the only obstacle in front of Su Zimo was tempering. What Su Zimo wanted to practice was how to remove more impurities and make the spirit weapon tougher so that it could withstand more spirit patterns. Young master, although I don't know much about weapon refinement, I've heard that it's impossible to succeed 100%. If there's only one set of materials and it fails, we'll have to purchase them ourselves. That's a waste of time and effort and it's not worth it. Nian Qi persuaded Su Zimo carefully. It's fine, just do as I say, Su Zimo smiled. For the next month, Su Zimo's life was on the right track. From morning to noon, Su Zimo chose to cultivate ethereal foundation establishment to raise his cultivation realm. After the battle at Dongling Valley and the thousands of miles of escape, Su Zimo's cultivation realm had loosened and he would be able to advance to late-stage foundation establishment within half a year. In the afternoon, Su Zimo focused all his attention on weapon refinement. As he recalled the images left behind by Hakuya, he compared them to the ancient tempering book and refined weapons. Su Zimo could initially refine inferior-grade spirit weapons. After a month, he made a breakthrough in tempering and could already refine middle-grade spirit weapons. However, if he wanted to condense 3 spirit patterns and refine superior-grade spirit weapons, he had to continue practicing and remove as many impurities as possible. This required a lot of hard work. There was no possibility of taking advantage of any shortcuts. At night, Su Zimo cultivated the mystic classic of the 12 demon kings of the great wilderness and tried his best to absorb and refine the essence energy of the dragon egg in his body, fusing it into his body completely. It was the same for Night Spirit, seemingly lying motionlessly at Su Zimo's feet. In reality, it was also refining the essence energy of the dragon egg in its body. The growth of Night Spirit's body was clearly much faster than before. A month later, Su Zimo's robes could no longer contain it. The surface of Night Spirit's body was getting rougher and black, tough armor was starting to grow on it, just like the scales of a divine dragon. At the end of Night Spirit's tail, an extremely sharp spike grew that was not any weaker than his claws. Night Spirit was getting more extraordinary and the ferocious glint in its eyes from time to time sent chills down Su Zimo's spine. During this period of time, Nian Qi's body changed the most. After cultivating Qi condensation, Nian Qi could truly sense spirit Qi. Furthermore, in less than 2 hours, Nian Qi was at level 1 Qi condensation. This speed was even faster than Su Zimo's back then. He was born with divine strength and could sense spirit Qi despite not having a spirit root. Everything that happened to Nian Qi was extremely mysterious and inexplicable. Nian Qi was extremely anxious as no cultivators visited the weapon workshop after it opened for a month. However, Su Zimo did not seem to care about that at all as he continued with his immortal cultivation, weapon refinement and demonic cultivation in an orderly manner. This day, someone knocked on the door of his residence for the first time. Su Zimo opened his eyes and heaved a sigh of relief. Even though he appeared calm for the past month, he was somewhat anxious internally. He did not have many spirit stones left in his storage bag. If there were no more customers, he would not be able to replenish the spirit stones required for his daily cultivation. Nian Qi had already rushed out excitedly and opened the door with a smile. Welcome to Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop. Fellow Taoist, please come in. Nian Qi was extremely beautiful to begin with. Now that he was smiling, it was even more mesmerizing. The person at the door froze on the spot. Blinking, Nian Qi probed, fellow Taoist, are you here for a custom-made spirit weapon? Ah! The person at the door snapped back to his senses and frowned. Opening his palms, he deduced repeatedly and muttered to himself, could I have gone to the wrong place? Why is there a woman here? Right then, Su Zimo walked out of his room. When he saw who it was, he could not help but be disappointed. The person was dressed in gray robes and was slightly plump. His face was pale without any facial hair and he held a folding fan in his hand. It was not a customer here for a custom-made spirit weapon, but Lin Xuanji. Nian Qi, come on back. Su Zimo called out. When Lin Xuanji heard Su Zimo's voice, his eyes lit up as he entered the residence and greeted warmly, "Brother Zimo, long time no see." Su Zimo felt a chill run down his spine when he heard that. Prior to this, Lin Xuanji could not wait to tear him apart. When did he become so friendly? There must be something wrong when things were abnormal. Chapter 256. After Lin Xuanji entered the courtyard, a black shadow flashed behind him. A menacing demon beast stood at the entrance of the residence. Its eyes were bloodshot and its body was covered in thick, pitch-black fur. Its limbs were muscular and it was tall and mighty, exuding a savage and malevolent aura. It was a Foundation Establishment spirit demon, an ancient remnant beast, the Phantom Hound. The Phantom Hound was extremely ferocious. No matter who it was, they would not rest until they were dead once they set their sights on them. Even in the ancient era, there were very few demon beasts or cultivators who were willing to provoke them. When he caught sight of such a demon beast, Nian Qi exclaimed and retreated instinctively. Roar! Nian Qi's reaction attracted the attention of the Phantom Hound. The Phantom Hound stuck its head out and glared at Nian Qi with bloodshot eyes. Opening its mouth slightly, it let out a deep growl from the depths of its throat. Su Zimo furrowed his brows slightly. Night Spirit, who was initially sprawled beside Su Zimo's feet, opened its eyes and glared at the Phantom Hound coldly before closing its eyes to rest. Lin Xuanji turned back and hollered. The Phantom Hound calmed down gradually. Lin Xuanji coughed gently. "This is a spirit demon that I just got." "Not bad, huh?" Su Zimo smiled and did not say anything. "Lass, you're not bad either. You're Nian Qi, right?" Lin Xuanji pointed to Nian Qi who was standing behind Su Zimo and added. Su Zimo remained silent and looked at Lin Xuanji with a fake smile. Lin Xuanji was clearly busy but was avoiding the topic. After a while, Lin Xuanji finally could not hold it in and revealed his fox tail. Looking at Night Spirit, he pretended to be surprised and said, "Aya, Night Spirit has grown so big. I almost couldn't recognize it." Su Zimo smiled. "Brother Lin, what's the matter? Just say it." "It's nothing. Look at how big Night Spirit has grown. I'm just looking for a playmate for him." Lin Xuanji beckoned to the Phantom Hound behind him and said, "Look, this spirit demon of mine is mighty and extraordinary. Furthermore, it's a female. It's so compatible with the Night Spirit." When Nian Qi heard this, his cheeks turned red and he spat softly. Su Zimo finally understood what Lin Xuanji was up to. This time, he actually planned to use his beauty to kidnap Night Spirit. Lin Xuanji brought the ghostly spirit dog in front of him and pointed in the direction of the Night Spirit, saying, "Go, you two get closer." When Su Zimo saw this, he did not stop them. The body of the Night Spirit was much smaller than that of the tormented Spirit Hound. The Ghost Hound walked in front of Night Spirit and looked down at Night Spirit from above. It let out a low growl, warning Night Spirit not to act rashly. Thereafter, the Ghost Hound lowered its head and sniffed the body of the Night Spirit. Right then, the Night Spirit suddenly opened its eyes. A cold glint flashed. Night Spirit extended a pair of sharp claws and dug them into the body of the Ghost Hound. At the same time, it opened its mouth and bit down on the throat of the Ghost Hound with lightning speed. Suddenly, the courtyard went silent. Snap! The sound of bones cracking could be heard. The throat of the Ghost Hound was bitten off by the Night Spirit and fresh blood gushed out, staining the ground red. The entire process happened too quickly. It was not only the Ghost Hound, even Su Zimo and Lin Xuanji could not react in time. The Ghost Hound's body twitched but it was powerless to resist. Its eyes dimmed and its life force drained rapidly, it could no longer survive. This was an unsolvable hunt. There were no unnecessary movements in Night Spirit's attack. It was clean and precise and his timing was impeccable as well. F***CK. Lin Xuanji jumped up. In order to abduct the Night Spirit, Lin Xuanji racked his brains and expended a Herculean effort to obtain this Ghost Hound. Who would have thought that it would be bitten to death by the night spirit the moment it arrived? At that moment, Lin Xuanji even had the urge to die. You evil dog, Lin Xuanji was so angry that his entire body was trembling. Raising his folding fan, he pointed it at Night Spirit's nose and was about to curse. Raising its head, the Night Spirit bit down on Lin Xuanji's folding fan once more and tore at it. Caught off guard, Lin Xuanji nearly dropped his folding fan. Hey! Why, you evil dog, let go! Lin Xuanji was so angry that his nose was crooked. The Night Spirit did not want to bite anything else but his folding fan. Lin Xuanji could throw away anything but this folding fan. Right then, a voice sounded from the entrance of the courtyard. May I know if I can customize middle-grade spirit weapons here? A Foundation establishment cultivator stood at the entrance and stuck his head in to ask with a doubtful tone. Of course, Nian Qi was the first to react as he hurried forward with a smile. Fellow Daoist, please come in. Su Zimo patted Night Spirit. The Night Spirit let go and no longer bothered with Lin Xuanji. Turning to leave, it sprawled on the ground not far away and closed its eyes to cultivate lazily. Lin Xuanji heaved a sigh of relief. I couldn't tell that you know how to refine weapons as well. Lin Xuanji glanced at Su Zimo from the corner of his eyes. Su Zimo smiled without saying anything. Nian Qi asked, how should I address you, fellow Daoist? Tan Fei. Nian Qi asked again, what kind of middle-grade spirit weapon do you want customized? Tan Fei had an uneasy expression. I don't have much materials and only prepared 2 sets. I wonder, there's no need, 1 set is enough, Nian Qi smiled. Ha! Ah! Both Tan Fei and Lin Xuanji were stunned with their mouths agape, unable to react for a moment. One set of materials? Tan Fei seemed to be in disbelief. He looked at Nian Qi and repeated his question. Nian Qi hesitated as well as he looked at Su Zimo. When he saw Su Zimo nod slightly, Nian Qi made up his mind and nodded vigorously. That's right, 1 set of materials. Hey, do you know how to refine weapons or not? Lin Xuanji leaned over and asked softly. Su Zimo chuckled. I know a little. What the F***ck do you know? Lin Xuanji pursed his lips. Throughout history, I've never heard of any weapon refinement master who dares to customize a spirit weapon for a single set of materials. Su Zimo replied, you'll be able to see it very soon. Lin Xuanji, Tan Fei asked carefully, how do you charge then? It's too expensive and I can't afford it. It's not expensive, just 3,000 middle-grade spirit stones, Nian Qi stated the price according to the initial rules. Just 3,000? There's no fluctuation. Tan Fei was in disbelief. Coughing gently, Tan Fei said, I'd better state my request. I want a custom-made hiltless saber that's 2 feet long, 2 fingers wide and weighs around 100 kilograms. After saying a lot, Tan Fei took a deep breath and asked embarrassedly, is it still 3,000 middle-grade spirit stones? To be fair, he had already visited all the weapon workshops in Monarch City before coming here. He heard that he only prepared 2 sets of materials and none of the weapon workshops were willing to accept the deal. Furthermore, according to his description, this middle-grade spiritual weapon was worth at least 4,000 middle-grade spiritual stones. If not for that, Tan Fei would not have come here, 3,000 it is, Nian Qi was certain this time round. However, Tan Fei was hesitant. He only needed 1 set of materials, and the custom-made price was so low. He was taking advantage of it, so he was really worried. Lin Xuanji watched the commotion with a smile, waiting to see Su Zimo make a fool of himself. Chapter 257. For a long time, Tan Fei could not make up his mind. I know that you have your concerns. Right then, Su Zimo spoke, how about this? Give me the materials first. If you succeed in refining the spirit weapon, you'll pay me 3,000 middle-grade spirit stones. If you fail, I'll compensate you with all the spirit stones the materials are worth. When he heard that, Tan Fei's eyes lit up. Tan Fei asked, "How many days do I have to wait?" Su Zimo replied indifferently, "There's no need. Just wait here. The middle-grade spirit weapon will be ready in a while." Ah! Tan Fei was stunned. Lin Xuanji was stunned as well. Just how much confidence did he have to be able to say such words? Alright then, the materials for refining the spirit weapon are all in this storage bag. Tan Fei decided to give it a try right here. Receiving the storage bag, Su Zimo took a look inside and had an idea of what was going on. Su Zimo did not return to his room. Instead, he took out his weapon tripod and intended to refine the middle-grade spirit weapon right in front of the three of them in the courtyard. For this first business deal, he had to reveal some extreme methods in order to attract more cultivators. Swoosh! A level 3 spirit fire appeared in his palm and began to roast the weapon tripod. When he saw the scarlet level 3 spirit fire, Tan Fei's confidence increased once more. Warming the tripod, smelting, molding, even though the three of them were not weapon refinement masters, they could tell that Su Zimo's technique was not rusty at all, as though he had practiced it countless times. As they watched Su Zimo refine the weapon, the three of them felt a sense of amazement in their hearts. "He's got some skills," Lin Xuanji muttered. Nian Qi gripped his fists instinctively, he was even more nervous than Su Zimo. Fourth step, tempering. A series of clinking sounds came from the weapon tripod. It was crisp and pleasing to the ears without any mess. Su Zimo did not completely copy the tempering technique in the book. Instead, he combined it with the image left behind by Hakuya Dojin and created his own unique set of thousand hammer finger technique. This set of thousand hammer finger technique, Su Zimo was still in the exploration stage, and had not perfected it to the large success stage. Although the situation of removing impurities was not ideal, it was much better than before. At least he could condense a tool embryo that could withstand 2 spiritual inscriptions. Not long after, the tempering ended. Fifth step, spirit gathering. Even though Lin Xuanji and the other two did not know much about weapon refinement, they knew that spirit gathering was the most crucial step in weapon refinement. Whether or not he could forge a middle-grade spirit weapon depended on whether he could successfully condense 2 spirit inscriptions. The three of them held their breaths and stared with rapt attention. But in the next moment, Su Zimo did something that scared the three of them half to death. Su Zimo suddenly took away the weapon refining cauldron, and without the protection of the weapon refining cauldron, he started to condense spirit marks. F***CK. Lin Xuanji was the first to react as he retreated. In reality, given his cultivation realm, even if the spirit gathering failed and the tool embryo exploded, he would not be hurt. However, it would be embarrassing if he ended up in a wretched state. Tan Fei froze for a moment before following suit and running. It was only when he reached the entrance that he turned around and hid behind it, watching the situation from afar. Nian Qi moved. She wanted to leave as well, but she was a little embarrassed. Afraid that Su Zimo would be embarrassed, she could only stand still on the spot. Whoosh! Right then, a bright light shone in front of Su Zimo. On the blade-shaped weapon embryo, there was actually a spirit pattern flashing. He succeeded in condensing the first spirit pattern. Lin Xuanji's eyes widened and his jaw almost dropped to the ground as he lamented internally, "That works too?" Time passed bit by bit, as though it was an extremely long time. Su Zimo was still attempting to condense the second spirit pattern. At times, he would stop suddenly and condense it again, repeating the process repeatedly. Even though he could not condense the second spirit pattern, however, the situation that the three of them were worried about did not happen. All of a sudden, just as the three of them were letting their imaginations run wild, another spirit light flashed in the courtyard. The second spirit pattern was condensed. Delighted, Tan Fei sprinted back hurriedly. Su Zimo let out a long breath of turbid air and soaked the saber in cold water, quenching it into shape. Tan Fei received the saber with both hands and fell in love with it the more he looked at it. The saber was almost identical to what he had requested. It had a dark black body and was streamlined. The blade was sharp and could slice through metal like mud. Fellow Daoist, this is your reward. Take it. Tan Fei took out a storage pouch and handed it to Su Zimo. Opening it, Su Zimo took a look and was slightly stunned. 3,000 middle-grade spirit stones is enough. That's too much. It's only right. Tan Fei said hurriedly, fellow Daoist, you only used a single set of materials to create a middle-grade spirit weapon. You saved me a lot of spirit stones and materials as well. This is what you deserve. Su Zimo did not decline and accepted it. Patting his chest, Tan Fei said, fellow Daoist, don't worry. A weapon refinement standard like yours shouldn't be buried. I'll definitely help you publicize it when I get back. Su Zimo smiled. Thank you very much. Tan Fei left the place happily. Before he left, he even muttered, godly, godly. Lin Xuanji said with lingering fear, no matter what, you're the first person who dared to remove the weapon tripod during spirit gathering. My horizons have truly been broadened. Su Zimo turned to Nian Qi and said, there's another rule in our weapon workshop. We'll only refine weapons in the afternoon and ignore anyone who comes at any other time. That's not very appropriate, right? Nian Qi hesitated. After all, it's the first time for many cultivators and they don't know about our rules. It's fine. You'll know after a few more visits. Su Zimo smiled. In the future, we'll have many more rules, actually, be it in terms of price or materials, Su Zimo's weapon workshop was far lower than other weapon workshops. He merely lacked an opportunity. But now, that opportunity had appeared, Tan Fei. Su Zimo believed that it wouldn't be long before Mo's spirit weapon workshop spread to every corner of the capital and many cultivators would know about it, causing its reputation to soar. There were people refining weapons daily in the capital. The weapon refinement world of the capital was calm as well. Half a year passed by in the blink of an eye. The 2 men and 1 beast of Mo's spirit weapon workshop had quite a bit of gains. With sufficient spirit stone resources, Su Zimo had already successfully advanced to late-stage foundation establishment 2 months ago. As for Nian Qi, he had actually reached level 7 Qi condensation after half a year of cultivation. That cultivation speed was not inferior to Su Zimo's back then. The night spirit had grown a little more as well. It was clear that the essence energy of the dragon egg had a huge effect on the growth of the night spirit as well. During this period of time, Lin Xuanji had tried dozens of methods to kidnap the night spirit. However, all of them ended in failure and he ended up dejected each time. Half a year later, Lin Xuanji finally couldn't take it anymore and bade farewell. This day, Su Zimo called Nian Qi over. Yes, the rules of Mo's spirit weapon workshop have to be changed. What rules? Nian Qi was not surprised. She was already used to it after half a year and was not surprised. She could guarantee that Mo's spirit weapon workshop had the most strange rules among all the weapon workshops in the capital. However, business was the best, Su Zimo said. From tomorrow onwards, Mo's spirit weapon workshop will no longer refine middle-grade spirit weapons. We'll only refine superior-grade spirit weapons. Ah! Nian Qi's mouth opened slightly with a stunned expression, unable to believe her ears. And no more middle-grade spirit weapons? Only superior-grade spirit weapons? After saying that, even Nian Qi was shocked. Su Zimo nodded. That's right, it's still a set of materials. However, you'll need 3,000 superior-grade spirit stones. Seeing that Su Zimo did not seem like he was joking, Nian Qi nodded instinctively. By the time she reacted, Su Zimo had already turned and left. For the past half a year, all the cultivators in the capital knew that the weapon refinement master named Mo's spirit had a strange personality and would only refine weapons in the afternoon. Once 6 hours passed, Mo's spirit weapon workshop would close no matter how many people were queuing outside. That afternoon, a large group of cultivators gathered outside Mo's spirit weapon workshop. They were densely packed and raised their heads in anticipation. Before long, the doors opened with a creak, revealing a peerlessly beautiful face. The cultivators who had been waiting outside for a long time were invigorated as they bounced up from their spots, one faster than the other. However, when they arrived at the entrance, everyone stopped in their tracks and did not dare to take a single step past the door. Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop had too many rules. Anyone who stepped through the doors without the permission of the owner would be disqualified from customizing spirit weapons in Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop. Initially, there were some cultivators who were unhappy. Although they did not dare to fight within the capital, they barged into the residence and caused a ruckus. In the end, they were bitten half to death by a huge black dog. Miss Nian Chi, look here. Look here. It's me. I'm Yuing Jun. Miss Nian Chi, I've been here for 3 days now. It should be my turn now, right? Get lost. I've been waiting here for a month. The crowd was crowded and noisy, huddling together at the entrance, but no one dared to take half a step forward. Nian Chi hesitated for a moment before saying slowly, fellow Taoists, from today onwards, Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop will no longer refine middle-grade spirit weapons. Huh? What? No more. The crowd gradually calmed down with confused expressions. Nian Chi continued, from now on, this place will only refine superior-grade spirit weapons. Yes, it's still a set of materials, but you'll need 3,000 superior-grade spirit stones. Why? Miss Nian Chi, that's not right. We're all here, why aren't you refining anymore? That's right. We want to meet fellow Taoist Mo Ling and make things clear. Many cultivators were indignant and protested loudly. Nian Chi stuck out her tongue and said, I forgot to tell everyone that my young master is in a bad mood today and won't be refining weapons. Everyone, you won't be able to meet him either. Please leave. With that said, Nian Chi closed the doors, leaving the messy crowd in a daze for a long time. A moment later, a cultivator pointed at the door with a trembling body and grit his teeth. She's too damn willful. Chapter 260. For the past half a year, although Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop had risen to fame, they could only refine middle-grade spirit weapons after all. Most of them were targeted at Chi refinement warriors and Foundation establishment cultivators, and their influence was limited. It was only when the news that superior-grade spirit weapons could be customized spread that Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop became truly famous. Most superior-grade spirit weapons were the symbol of perfected Jin Dan. Typically speaking, the first thing a Foundation establishment cultivator would do after forming a core was to raise the grade of their spirit weapons. However, even the cheapest superior-grade spirit weapon required 3,000 superior-grade spirit stones. If they wanted to customize superior-grade spirit weapons, the price would be even higher and they would have to prepare 10 sets of materials. Cultivators who had just entered the Jin Dan realm typically did not have the ability to purchase them. As a result, many cultivators had to reach mid-stage or even late-stage Jin Dan realm before they could obtain a superior-grade spirit weapon of their own. However, the emergence of Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop gave many perfected Jin Dan cultivators who had just formed a core a glimmer of hope. From that day onwards, every afternoon, it was no longer Chi refinement warriors or Foundation establishment cultivators who gathered outside Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop. Instead, it was a group of perfected Jin Dan cultivators. That was a rather spectacular sight. In the capital, apart from the Emperor of Great Zhou, there was probably no one else who had such charisma. Furthermore, even perfected Jin Dan did not dare to break the rules of Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop for fear of being disqualified from customizing superior-grade spirit weapons. What's the background of this Mo Ling? He's so arrogant to have all of us perfected Jin Dan cultivators wait outside. Didn't you see that perfected being Lu has been here for 7 consecutive days? Even Jin Dan cultivators are waiting obediently in the later stages. Let's wait as well. True monstrous geniuses have unusual temperaments. That person must be someone who is arrogant because of his talents. Spring passed and autumn came. In the blink of an eye, Su Zimo had already stayed in the capital for a year and a half. There was only a year left before the sect competition. A year and a half was almost fleeting for cultivators. However, for Su Zimo, he had been transforming every single moment for the past year and a half. It was a transformation that came from all aspects. In terms of refining, Su Zimo's skills were becoming more and more skillful, and his understanding of refining was becoming deeper and deeper. The thousand hammer finger technique that belonged to him was also being perfected as he continued to practice it. It was nearing completion. By the time the thousand tempering finger technique was perfected, Su Zimo was 100% confident that he would be able to refine a supreme-grade spirit weapon. With the supply of sufficient spirit stones, Su Zimo's cultivation base was also growing steadily, slowly approaching the peak of foundation establishment. Of course, what made Su Zimo the happiest was that he had already refined more than half of the dragon egg essence in his body. In another year's time, Su Zimo would be able to refine all of the dragon egg's essence energy. According to the current trend, his organs refining chapter would also reach the grand completion stage. At greater mastery of the organs refinement section, the moment Su Zimo stopped concealing the existence of his demonic chi and unleashed his full power of blood chi, he could wipe out almost all foundation establishment cultivators. Of course, that was not realistic, unless Su Zimo wanted to become the target of public criticism. In the past year and a half, the Night Spirit had already refined and absorbed all of the Dragon Egg's essence energy in his body. It was much faster than Su Zimo. The Night Spirit's body had grown even larger and was half the height of a human. It was covered in black scales that were incomparably tough. The scales did not have any luster and allowed the Night Spirit to blend into the night perfectly without being discovered. Looking at the Night Spirit's body, a thought would flash through Su Zimo's mind from time to time. This body was made for killing. Agility, strength, burst, defense, speed and many other conditions were fused perfectly on the Night Spirit's body. Ever since the assassination attempt by the Shadow Rat, there were a few similar situations in the residence. However, before Su Zimo could make a move, the cultivators and spirit demons that came to investigate were all killed by the Night Spirit without making a single sound. Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop's business was getting better and there were more and more perfected Jean Dan who visited daily to customize superior-grade spirit weapons. Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop's influence in the capital was growing as well. From the nobles to the commoners, everyone had heard of Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop. Among them, True Fire Weapon Workshop was the one that was affected the most. Prior to this, True Fire Weapon Workshop was the #1 in the capital. But now, Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop was showing signs of replacing it. Although on the surface, the two weapon workshops were peaceful and did not interfere in each other's business, everyone knew that this was only on the surface. Sooner or later, this peace would be broken. This morning, a series of knocks sounded from outside Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop. In a flash, Nian Qi arrived before the door and opened it. A plump cultivator dressed as a merchant stood outside with a nervous expression. Fellow Daoist, the customization of spirit weapons will only begin in the afternoon. You're early, Nian Qi said. And no, I'm not. The merchant waved it off hurriedly and coughed gently. I'm the owner of this residence. Ah. Nian Qi was stunned. Let him in. Right then, Su Zimo's voice sounded. Nian Qi turned around and the merchant bowed hurriedly. After expressing his gratitude, he entered Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop carefully, as though the ground beneath his feet did not belong to him but someone else. This is the rent for the next 2 years. Take a look. Su Zimo placed a storage bag on the table and pushed it in front of the merchant. The merchant panicked and waved it off hurriedly. Don't. How can I accept your rent? Fellow Daoist, you're really making things difficult for me. Su Zimo asked with a smile, if you're not here to collect rent, is there something else? Yes. The merchant had an uneasy expression and a pleading look appeared in his eyes as he rubbed his hands. I would like to ask for your help in crafting a superior-grade spirit weapon, fellow Daoist. Initially, Su Zimo wanted to reject him on the spot. However, a single supreme-grade spirit weapon would cost at least 500,000 superior-grade spirit stones. No matter how he looked at it, he had profited greatly from this transaction and could be said to have found a silver lining. The merchant left Mo's spirit weapon workshop gleefully. That day, a piece of news spread through the capital rapidly in an earth-shattering manner. From this day forth, Mo's spirit weapon workshop would no longer refine superior-grade spirit weapons. Instead, they would be customizing supreme-grade spirit weapons. What did customizing supreme-grade spirit weapons mean? This meant that Mo's spirit weapon workshop had full confidence in refining supreme-grade spirit weapons. Throughout history, no weapon refinement master had ever dared to make such a claim. Of course, Mo's spirit weapon workshop's customization of supreme-grade spirit weapons was very different from the previous rules. Firstly, Mo's spirit weapon workshop would only customize a single supreme-grade spirit weapon every month. They would not be open for business at any other time. Secondly, Mo's spirit weapon workshop would hold an auction at the beginning of every month where the highest bidder would have the chance to customize a supreme-grade spirit weapon for that month. Thirdly, cultivators would have to prepare 30 sets of materials for supreme-grade spirit weapons. The moment the news spread, the capital was in an uproar. Many Jin Dan realm experts appeared one after another and walked out of seclusion, wanting to head to Mo's spirit weapon workshop. Supreme-grade spirit weapons were way too tempting for perfected Jin Dan and there was no market for them. Given Su Zimo's capabilities, he would only require a single set of materials to refine a supreme-grade spirit weapon every afternoon. With that, he would be able to refine 30 supreme-grade spirit weapons in a month. That was an extremely frightening number. If all of them were placed in the market, it would cause a huge uproar and even attract a lot of trouble. The price of supreme-grade spirit weapons would definitely drop as well. Therefore, Su Zimo changed his method. To the outside world, he would only refine a single supreme-grade spirit weapon every month. However, in reality, Su Zimo would refine a supreme-grade spirit weapon every day using the 30 sets of materials required to customize a supreme-grade spirit weapon and continue to raise his weapon refinement standards. That night, two perfected Jin Dan cultivators arrived at True Fire Weapon Workshop, looking travel-worn and weathered. Both of them were old men with white beards and wrinkles all over their faces. Their eyes were cloudy and they exuded an aura of old age. Meng Han, Liang Qiu, please come in, fellow Taoists. Elder Zhang went forward and welcomed the two of them into the back hall hurriedly. Elder Zhang, long time no see. How have you been? Meng Han nodded and cupped his fists. Heis. Elder Zhang shook his head and let out a long sigh. Liang Qiu said, don't worry, Elder Zhang. The reason why we're here is to resolve this matter for the sect. Don't worry. That's right. Both of us don't have much lifespan left. Instead of dying of old age, we might as well fight this person to death in exchange for the prosperity of True Fire Sect. A vicious glint flashed through Meng Han's cloudy eyes. For the past 1.5 years, True Fire Weapon Workshop had been enduring silently. However, when news of Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop being able to customize supreme-grade spirit weapons spread, Elder Zhang could no longer sit still. The influence of Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop was growing. If they allowed it to continue developing, it would not only affect the business of True Fire Weapon Workshop, but also the reputation of True Fire Sect. True Fire Sect sent two perfected Jin Dan cultivators to the capital right away. They were Liang Qiu and Meng Han. True Fire Sect's plan was clear, to exchange lives. In the capital of Great Zhou, there were 3 capital guards, the Scarlet Vulture, Azure Falcon and White Hawk guards. The commanders of the 3 guards were all Jin Dan realm experts. The 3 guards took turns patrolling the streets day and night in a strict manner. If there was even the slightest movement, the patrolling guards would arrive at the first moment. As for Liang Qiu and Meng Han, they wanted to kill Mo Ling in the weapon workshop before the capital guards arrived. This was an assassination that they knew was bound to die, a life for a life. Of course, if not for the fact that Liang Qiu and Meng Han were nearing the end of their lifespans, they would not have come for this. Chapter 262. Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop. Su Zimo assumed a lotus position in his room and used the breathing technique of the organs refinement section to refine the essence energy of the dragon egg in his body. Each time he inhaled, Su Zimo's mouth and nose would release a rich demonic chi that filled the room, conjuring all sorts of beasts. Some flapped their wings and soared into the skies while others roared into the skies. All of them had different forms and were extraordinary. Among the thousands of beasts, Su Zimo sat in the middle motionlessly, exuding a terrifying aura that was above all life that was shuddering. It was late at night and Ni and Chi had already fallen asleep in the room beside him. Only the night spirit accompanied Su Zimo the entire time. All of a sudden, Su Zimo jolted awake from his cultivation and opened his eyes, causing two cold glints to flash through the night. He felt a strong sense of trepidation. Almost at the same time, the night spirit sensed it and stood up as well. Su Zimo narrowed his eyes. There did not seem to be anything different in the courtyard. If not for his spirit perception, Su Zimo would not have been able to sense that danger was approaching. Someone had climbed over the wall and landed in the courtyard. The fact that they could hide from Su Zimo's eyes and ears without a sound was proof of how strong they were. The Jishui River was still flowing with gushing water. Although it seemed normal, Su Zimo could vaguely catch a hint of abnormality in the sound of flowing water. There were experts approaching from both the front and back. If Su Zimo was not wrong, the intruders should be at the level of perfected Jin Dan. Liang Qiu and Meng Han did not dare to be careless and had already made plans in True Fire Weapon Workshop. In order to ensure that nothing went wrong, the two of them split up. One of them entered through the walls while the other sneaked into Jishui River and flowed downstream. Almost at the same time, two perfected Jin Dan who did not have much lifespan entered the residence and headed toward Su Zimo's room. Up till now, the two of them had yet to use spirit energy. The moment spirit energy was used, especially in a fight, the guards of the capital would definitely be alerted. The sooner the guards were alerted, the less time they had left. Suddenly, a faint sigh came from the room. "You're finally here." Upon hearing that, Liang Qiu and Meng Han's expressions changed. Then, a dazzling light shone under their feet. The light of the Great Array. Outside the room, there was a formation engraved on it. The light of the Grand Formation was blazing like a torch, shooting straight into the clouds, adding a murderous aura to the boundless night. Tonight, it was the Azure Falcon Guard's turn to patrol. Every Azure Falcon Guard had a demonic beast, the Azure Falcon, as their companion, hence the name. Each of the Gerfalcons was a Foundation Establishment Realm Spirit Demon. They were all extraordinary and powerful. When they flapped their wings and unleashed their full power, they were extremely fast. All the Blue Falcons patrolling the streets of Royal City saw the formation light beam. Looking at the light of this formation, it should be a Grade 2 formation. Yes, but look at the heterogeneous light. It might be two or more types of formations fused together. The Azure Falcon Guards discussed as they sped towards the origin of the formation light. Which direction is this? By the looks of it, it seems to be Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop. Not good, Mr. Mo is in trouble. The expressions of many Azure Falcon Guards changed starkly as they sped with all their might. One of them even withdrew a green badge from his storage bag and tossed it into the air. When the badge was tossed to the highest point, it exploded silently and a gigantic Gerfalcon appeared. The Azure Falcon Badge. The Azure Falcon Badge would only be used when something extremely important happened. For the past 2 years, the person with the greatest influence and reputation in the capital was the owner of Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop, Weapon Refinement Master Mo Ling. Now, everyone had to respectfully address him as Mr. Mo, even when they were discussing after a meal. The fact that he could customize supreme-grade spirit weapons alone was enough to make Mo Ling the #1 weapon refinement master of the Great Zhou dynasty. In the capital, be it early-stage Jin Dan perfected beings or late-stage Jin Dan perfected beings, it was an honor to be able to meet Mr. Mo. Almost at the same time, a green figure soared into the air and sped towards Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop at lightning speed. The moment the formation light lit up, Liang Qiu and Meng Han's hearts sank. It was only a grade 2 formation and could not trap the two of them. However, the two of them had already alerted the capital guards before they could even meet the legendary Mo Ling. It was equivalent to them losing the initiative, and the situation took a turn for the worse. They were completely passive. 10 breaths. If the commander of the Azure Falcon Guards, Mu Dongqing, were to rush here at full speed, he would only need 10 breaths. This meant that Liang Qiu and Meng Han had to find Mo Ling within 10 breaths and kill him on the spot. Otherwise, they would be the ones to die when the commander of the Azure Falcon Guards arrived after 10 breaths. 10 breaths. That's enough. Liang Qiu hollered and conjured hand seals with his left hand, conjuring a spirit art. His right sleeve trembled and a flying sword shot out. Almost instantly, 3 spirit patterns lit up on the sword. It was a superior grade spirit weapon. Boom! Accompanied by a loud bang, the barrier of the grade 2 formation shattered on the spot and dissipated into the world, revealing a green-robed cultivator behind it. He had delicate features and a calm expression as he glared over coldly. At the same time, Meng Han slapped his storage bag and waved both hands, shooting out 2 cold beams of light. The spirit patterns lit up and shone brightly. 2 superior grade flying swords. Die! Meng Han's 2 flying swords shot towards the green-robed cultivator like 2 streaks of light. Before the swords arrived, the cold air was oppressive and the surrounding temperature plummeted. At that moment, a breath had passed. Everyone knew. There were only 2 people and 1 beast in Mo's spirit weapon workshop. Since the green-robed cultivator before them was not the girl named Nian Qi, his identity was obvious. In reality, Liang Qiu and Meng Han were stunned the moment they caught sight of Su Zimo. They had not expected that the #1 weapon refinement master of Great Zhou, Mr. Imo, would be a young man in his 20s. Furthermore, the young man was only at Foundation Establishment realm. However, before long, Liang Qiu and Meng Han snapped back to their senses and a look of mockery flashed through their eyes. He tapped his storage bag and a protection talisman appeared in his palm, which he crushed immediately. Whoosh! A barrier appeared on the surface of Liang Qiu's body and shone with a blazing light, bursting forth with a shocking power. All of Night Spirit's killing moves were blocked by the protection talisman. Night Spirit's body was repelled by the power of the protection talisman as well. Liang Qiu was so scared that he broke out in cold sweat. Crack! 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 The light barrier shattered and dimmed. Although Liang Qiu was unscathed, Night Spirit's single lunge destroyed a grade 3 protection talisman. As for Liang Qiu, he relied on the grade 3 talisman to prolong his life and gain a breather. Beast, how dare you! Liang Qiu was enraged. Jin Dan channeled and an incomparably pure spirit energy burst forth. Conjuring hand seals with his left hand, he waved his right hand and a frosty sword chi pierced towards Night Spirit's head instantly. The moment Night Spirit missed its attack, he already realized that something was amiss. Shoo! A cold light flashed. Both parties were too close. Coupled with the fact that Liang Qiu attacked with all his might in a rage, the flying sword arrived almost instantly. Night Spirit tilted his head with all his might and avoided a fatal blow. A flash of blood appeared. A bone-deep wound appeared on Night Spirit's cheek and blood flowed profusely. In reality, given Liang Qiu's strength as a Jin Dan, even if Night Spirit avoided a fatal blow, the sword chi on the sword was enough to slice Night Spirit's head into 2. However, it was the pitch-black scales on Night Spirit's cheeks that blocked most of the damage from the sword chi and saved its life. Although it was merely a single exchange, it was already perilous. If the man and beast did not deal with it properly, both of them would die on the spot. Chapter 264. No matter what, the difference in strength between the two of them was clear. Night Spirit was still in his infancy stage and could only be considered as a Foundation Establishment spirit demon. Although Liang Dan was an old man past his prime, he was a Jin Dan perfected being. Furthermore, his flying sword was only the first strike. The moment he attacked, Liang Dan conjured a spirit art with his left hand and conjured a gigantic fire spear that emitted an incomparably scorching temperature. The surrounding air was already burning with crackling sounds. "Bastard, die!" Liang Dan growled and revealed a menacing smile. Both of them were extremely close. Coupled with the fact that Night Spirit had just dodged Liang Dan's flying sword and was still in midair, there was no way for him to dodge at all. If he was struck by perfected Jin Dan's spirit art, Night Spirit would be severely injured even with the protection of his black scales. That was how melee combat was. It was extremely dangerous and only a single moment mattered. The situation took a turn for the worse. Night Spirit missed his attack and lost the initiative. He was instantly in grave danger. On the other side, Meng Han had attacked Su Zimo as well. Shoo! Shoo! The sound of sharp blades tearing through the air was extremely ear-piercing and carried with them a suffocating chill. Two sword beams streaked through the night sky and arrived before Su Zimo almost instantly. Meng Han did not underestimate Su Zimo just because he was a Foundation establishment cultivator. A lion would use all its strength even when hunting a rabbit. One after another, the two flying swords trapped Su Zimo in the middle, cutting off his escape route completely. After the formation was destroyed, Su Zimo and Night Spirit were completely exposed to the two perfected Jin Dan perfected beings and had no chance of escaping. If they wanted to live, they could only rely on their true capabilities. When Meng Han attacked, Su Zimo did not even look. That was because he knew that perfected Jin Dan was too fast and it would be too late for him to dodge by the time he saw the incoming flying sword. Su Zimo relied on his spirit perception. The cicada senses the autumn wind before it moves. Meng Han's two flying swords had just left his hand when Su Zimo instantly lowered his body and laid on the ground. Using his limbs, he was like a nimble python as he charged forward at an extremely fast speed. When the flying sword missed, Meng Han frowned. He obviously didn't expect Su Zimo to have such a move. Su Zimo walked close to the ground. His expression was calm, and his eyes emitted a deep light. When his gaze fell on another person, it was as if he had seen his prey. At almost the same time. On the other side of the battlefield, Night Spirit did not panic at all when he saw the thick and huge fire spear about to shoot out from Liang Dan's fingertips. His eyes were pitch black and his gaze was cold. Between the man and the beast, a strange fluctuation suddenly appeared in the void. Whoosh! It was as if something had pierced through the night sky and stabbed back at him in an instant. It was Night Spirit's tail. Puff! The sound of a sharp weapon piercing flesh could be heard. Instantly, the sharp spike on Night Spirit's tail pierced through Liang Dan's extended arm. Ah! Liang Dan could not help but cry out in pain when he was severely injured. His arm trembled and the spirit energy gathered on his fingertips almost dissipated. Although the fire spear was shot out, its strength was much weaker. Bang! Just as Liang Dan had expected, Night Spirit did not have the strength to dodge the incoming fire spear and was struck right in the chest. However, due to the decrease in strength of the fire spear, Night Spirit merely rolled on the ground before crawling back up. His gaze was ferocious and he reeked of blood. Liang Dan truly did not expect the situation to change in the instant they exchanged blows. Night Spirit's final struggle had not only resolved his crisis, he had even been injured. That was his combat talent. Night Spirit made use of its immense combat talent to forcefully reverse the situation from an absolute disadvantage. Furthermore, it even managed to gain a slight advantage against the Golden Cores. Before Liang Dan could catch his breath, another suffocating killing intent surged over. Suddenly, a black shadow rose from the ground and arrived before him. Hand over your life. Su Zimo hollered and swung his arm, drawing a gigantic arc in midair. Using his fist as a seal, he descended from the skies and instantly caused the air to explode with a deafening sound. Time seemed to have stopped. Instantly, Liang Dan's pupils constricted and his heart stopped beating. In just a few short breaths, Liang Dan had truly been shocked way too much. Night Spirit was only one of them. It was even more so for this green-robed cultivator named Mo Ling. Liang Dan truly had not expected that a mere Foundation establishment cultivator would choose not to escape against the assassination of two perfected Jean Dan. Instead, he would take the initiative to attack perfected Jean Dan. Who gave him the guts? Furthermore, Su Zimo's timing this time round could be said to be perfect. Liang Dan's protection talisman was already shattered, his left arm was injured and he had yet to recall his flying sword. He had just released a spirit art and his spirit energy was unable to sustain it. This was his weakest moment. Against Su Zimo's fist, Liang Dan had no means of defending and could only raise his right arm instinctively to block while retreating at the same time. Bang! Liang Dan's arm collided with Su Zimo's fist and let out a sound of leather being defeated. Snap! Immediately after, the bone-chilling sound of bones cracking could be heard. In Liang Dan's line of sight, his forearm was completely broken and bent into an extremely strange state. Liang Dan opened his mouth and was about to scream when an even more tragic aura of death surged over, drowning his voice. The seal broke his arm, but it didn't stop there. Its power didn't seem to have weakened much, and it continued to smash toward his head. If it hit, Liang Dan's head would explode instantly. Shoo! At the same time, one of Meng Han's flying swords was entangled with Night Spirit while the other flew over and pierced towards the back of Su Zimo's head. If Su Zimo dodged, given Liang Dan's cultivation, he would definitely be able to seize the opportunity to escape danger. However, if Su Zimo did not care, even if he could kill Liang Dan with his palm, his head would be pierced by the flying sword and he would die on the spot. In a flash, Su Zimo did not have time to think and his gaze flickered. Without a change in expression, he retracted his right hand that had turned into a gigantic seal. Liang Hao heaved a long sigh of relief and was drenched in sweat. He retreated as though he had just walked through the gates of hell. However, Su Zimo did not even turn back as he spread his right hand behind his head, as though he wanted to use his palm to defend against the sharpness of the flying sword. When they saw that, Meng Han and Liang Dan were stunned. No matter how strong Mo Ling's physique was, there was no way he could defend against the superior-grade flying sword of perfected being Jean Dan. What was the meaning of his actions? Was Mo Ling dumb? Clang! Instantly, the flying sword pierced Su Zimo's right palm and fresh blood flowed out. However, the sound of metal clashing could be heard. The flying sword did not manage to pierce Su Zimo's right palm. Meng Han's expression changed starkly. How was that possible? Even though he managed to defend against the sword, the tremendous force from the flying sword still caused Su Zimo to grunt as the flesh on his arm exploded into a blood mist. Making use of that force, Su Zimo took a step forward and arrived before Liang Dan instantly. Liang Dan had just calmed down when his heart skipped a beat before he could even catch his breath. Not good. When he met Su Zimo's gaze, Liang Dan's expression changed. How was that the gaze of a human? That gaze was clearly as though he wanted to devour someone. Su Zimo extended his left arm and his tendons and bones rang together. His arm expanded and coiled around Liang Dan's head like a long snake. Liang Dan's head spun around his neck and was almost twisted off. By the time it was fixed, it was already unrecognizable. Liang Dan was dead. Jean Dan was dead. Chapter 265. From the moment Night Spirit attacked to the two exchanges with Liang Dan, to the moment Su Zimo closed in and released killing moves consecutively to kill Liang Dan, the entire process seemed slow on the surface but in reality, it only took 2 breaths of time. Suddenly, the courtyard fell silent. Meng Han's eyes widened in disbelief as he looked at Liang Dan who was on the ground. Perfected Jean Dan had died in the hands of a Foundation establishment cultivator. Everything happened too quickly. It was so quick that Meng Han could not accept it. What Meng Han could not understand was why his flying sword did not pierce Su Zimo's palm. His flying sword had clearly pierced Su Zimo's flesh, why was it suddenly stuck and the sound of metal clashing could be heard? If not for that, Liang Dan would not have died. That was the truth as well. Although Su Zimo was both an immortal and demonic cultivator and night spirit had sharp claws, in terms of true strength, he was still unable to take on perfected Jin Dan head-on. In a different environment and situation, be it Su Zimo or night spirit, they could only flee in a one-on-one fight. However, there were way too many factors that could affect the outcome of a fight between cultivators. Night spirit played a huge role in killing perfected Jin Dan. If it had not destroyed Liang Dan's protection talisman and attracted most of his attention, Su Zimo would not have had the chance to get close. Of course, Liang Dan's greatest mistake was to underestimate Su Zimo's courage and determination. He was not the only one. Meng Han had not expected that Su Zimo would dare to take the initiative to attack against the assassination of two perfected Jin Dan. In just 2 breaths of time, the situation had undergone an earth-shattering change. Liang Dan was dead. Meng Han was the only one left. Most importantly, he only had 3 breaths of time left. Unknowingly, a young girl around 17 or 18 years old walked out from another room. She wore an elegant long dress and was extremely beautiful with her yellow, curly hair that was let down. A flying sword hovered in front of Nian Qi and buzzed with a bright spirit light. There were actually 4 spirit patterns flickering on it. A supreme-grade flying sword. Meng Han took a look and his mouth twitched. His eyeballs nearly popped out of their sockets. As a Taoist master Jin Dan, he had lived for over 400 years and was about to die, but he had never used a supreme-grade flying sword in his entire life. This girl was only in the early stage of foundation establishment, and she was just a little maid. How could she have a supreme-grade flying sword? Suddenly, Meng Han recalled some rumors in the capital recently. Many cultivators said that the green-robed cultivator before him was the #1 weapon refinement master of the Great Zhou dynasty and could even customize supreme-grade spirit weapons. Before this, Meng Han refused to believe it and scoffed at the rumors. He had lived for so long, but he had never heard of any weapon refiner who dared to say that they could customize supreme-grade spirit weapons. Now, Meng Han believed it when he saw the supreme-grade flying sword floating in front of Nian Qi. Even a little maidservant had a supreme-grade flying sword. How many supreme-grade spiritual artifacts did Imo Ling possess? In the courtyard, Su Zimo, Night Spirit and Nian Qi stood in 3 different directions, facing off against Meng Han. Under normal circumstances, an early-stage foundation establishment girl would pose no threat to Meng Han. However, the problem was that the girl was wielding a supreme-grade flying sword. Although the strength of an early-stage foundation establishment was insufficient, the lethality of a supreme-grade flying sword was way too strong. The 2 people and beast had different methods and there was nothing to be afraid of if any one of them stood out. However, the 2 people and beast each had their own trump cards and none of them could be underestimated. Nian Qi's supreme-grade flying sword. Night Spirit's lackey had a strong physique. However, Su Zimo's methods were the most unfathomable to Meng Han. He had the body and speed of a demon beast, a terrifying burst of strength, proficient in melee combat techniques and an extremely sharp sense of danger. Against this foundation establishment cultivator, Meng Han felt a hint of fear in the depths of his heart. Ah! Meng Han cast aside his distracting thoughts and roared, attacking ferociously. He could not wait any longer. This was his final gamble and the only chance to kill Su Zimo. Shoo! Shoo! Meng Han's sleeves fluttered and 2 flying swords shot out. At the same time, he conjured hand seals with his left hand, conjuring a gigantic blazing disc that enveloped Night Spirit. Meng Han's first attack was 1 against 3 and he was targeting them. He had witnessed the speed of Night Spirit's movement technique and knew that it would be difficult to stop Night Spirit with a flying sword unless the sword-wielding technique was intricate enough. Therefore, Meng Han chose to use a spirit art that had a larger attack range. The purpose of that spirit art was to slow down Night Spirit slightly. As for the other 2 flying swords, they were extremely fast. One of them headed straight for Nian Qi while the other pierced towards Su Zimo. Su Zimo's gaze flickered. The moment Meng Han attacked, he moved and stuck close to the ground, arriving before Meng Han in the blink of an eye. Su Zimo soared into the air and took a deep breath of air. His chest puffed up as he knelt on one knee and raised his hands. It was as though he was holding an immortal peach in his palms as killing intent gushed out from his eyes. "You've been tricked." Meng Han's eyes lit up and he laughed sinisterly. The Jin Dan within his body circulated wildly as he conjured hand seals with both hands, conjuring two long spears that pierced toward Su Zimo viciously. This was the moment he had been waiting for. This was a full-powered attack from perfected Jin Dan and there was no way Su Zimo could defend against it head-on. The moment Su Zimo died, Meng Han realized that even if he were to attack with all his might against Su Zimo, it would be difficult for him to kill the latter within 3 breaths as long as the latter chose to escape instead of fighting. Therefore, Meng Han attacked first to restrain Night Spirit before attacking Su Zimo and Nian Qi at the same time. That attack did not pose much of a threat to Su Zimo. However, it was enough to claim Nian Qi's life. Not everyone possessed Su Zimo's spirit perception and could avoid perfected Jin Dan's flying sword at Foundation Establishment Realm. Therefore, if Su Zimo wanted to save Nian Qi, he had to attack with all his might. That scene was exactly the same as how Su Zimo killed Liang Dan just now. The only difference was that Liang Dan was not prepared. However, Meng Han had already prepared a backup plan. Before the flying sword could reach Nian Qi, it had already lost Meng Han's control and fell. That attack was a feint with the goal of luring Su Zimo forward. Right from the beginning, Meng Han's entire focus was on Su Zimo. Su Zimo was half-kneeling on the ground while Meng Han stood upright and looked down from above. The two of them were extremely close and were almost face to face. Su Zimo's outcome seemed to be destined. Suddenly, Meng Han saw a hint of mockery in Su Zimo's eyes. "Kill!" The next moment, Su Zimo suddenly opened his mouth and let out a deafening roar from the depths of his throat. A massive air current surged over like a sharp arrow. Meng Han was caught off guard and shuddered. He was momentarily distracted and his hand paused momentarily. However, he still plunged down. The moment Meng Han was distracted, Su Zimo exerted strength in his legs and fell to the ground, dodging backwards. The entire process was as smooth as flowing water without any sluggishness at all. The moment Su Zimo closed in, he retreated at an even faster speed without stopping. Meng Han's initial attack was a feint. As for Su Zimo's sanguine ape fruit offering, it was also a feint. The one who was fooled was not Su Zimo, but Meng Han. Su Zimo expected that Meng Han would definitely kill him. However, he could not leave Nian Qi in the lurch. That was the reason why he advanced and retreated. This was a psychological game of life and death. In the end, Su Zimo won. Chapter 266. Boom! There was a deafening sound. The 2 spears in Meng Han's hands were stabbed into the ground heavily. Instantly, the stone slabs exploded and sand flew everywhere while mud was overturned. He missed. Meng Han looked at the huge pit that he had just created in front of him and was slightly dazed. Meng Han maintained his original posture of bending over and gripping the air with both hands motionlessly as though he was holding on to 2 spears. He had lost. Meng Han's gaze dimmed gradually. There were only 2 breaths of time left and Meng Han still had the strength to launch his final attack. However, he felt a deep sense of helplessness in his heart. That was because he knew that there was no way he could kill Su Zimo within 2 breaths of time. Unless, Meng Han lowered his head and a glint flashed through the depths of his eyes before disappearing swiftly. In the eyes of Su Zimo, Nian Qi and Night Spirit, Meng Han was like an old man who had lost his soul, frozen on the spot and helpless. This was a rare opportunity. Night Spirit's gaze was dark. Just as he was about to pounce forward and bite Meng Han to death, he was stopped by Su Zimo's gaze. Night Spirit understood the stern warning in Su Zimo's eyes and did not act rashly. Not far away, the sound of robes fluttering could be heard clearly. The intruder had a powerful aura and was rushing over at lightning speed. The guards of the capital were about to arrive. Furthermore, that person's cultivation should be perfected Jin Dan as well. Meng Han hunched his back and raised his head. His eyes were turbid and dull, as though he had aged significantly in an instant, and the aura he exuded was even stronger. You've won. Meng Han looked at Su Zimo quietly with a helpless tone and a self-mocking smile. Su Zimo turned slightly and glanced at Meng Han from the corner of his eyes. He did not say anything, but there was a faint smile on his lips. My fate is already set. Mo Ling, kill me. Meng Han sighed deeply and closed his eyes, as if he had completely given up on resisting. Su Zimo suddenly laughed and asked, do you really want me to rush up now so that you can self-destruct Jin Dan? Hearing this, Meng Han suddenly opened his eyes. His face was ferocious, and he finally revealed his fangs and claws. Self-destructing Jin Dan was his final trump card. Meng Han knew that with Su Zimo's alertness and agility, even if he used all his strength, he wouldn't be able to get close to Su Zimo in 2 breaths. That was why Meng Han decided to take the risk and make a final gamble. He wanted to lure Su Zimo into his trap by pretending to be completely disheartened. Unfortunately, Su Zimo saw through it at a glance. A crushing defeat. Right from the beginning, he and Liang Dan had never had the upper hand and were led by the nose by Mo Ling, a weapon refinement master and a mere foundation establishment cultivator. Meng Han grit his teeth hatefully and flew into a rage out of humiliation. With a deep growl, he charged toward Su Zimo. At the same time, the Jin Dan in Meng Han's dantian spun rapidly and expanded continuously. Before long, it reached a critical point and emitted a frightening aura. Self-destructing Jin Dan was a difficult choice for most perfected Jin Dan cultivators. However, Meng Han did not hesitate at all. That was because his fate was already set. His lifespan was almost up, and even if he wasn't killed by the guards of the capital, he wouldn't be able to live for more than 3 years. The moment Meng Han made his move, Su Zimo had already retreated into the distance. Sprinting the entire time, he maintained a sufficient distance from Meng Han. Audacious thief, how dare you! Right at this moment, a middle-aged man in green armor stepped through the air and roared loudly, "Brother, you're the one who's going to die." The person wielded a gigantic hammer in each hand. He had a black face and a curly beard. His voice was rough and deafening. Get lost! The bearded man blocked Meng Han's path and glared with widened eyes. Exhaling, he threw the hammers in his hands over. Swoosh! The hammer arrived in an instant and smashed into Meng Han's chest. Snap! Meng Han's chest caved in deeply as his face turned pale. Like a kite with a broken string, he was sent flying instantly. Meng Han's body was still in midair when the energy within his body froze and was released. Boom! The golden elixir exploded, unleashing a destructive force that swept out in all directions. The Jin Dan was the essence of a cultivator's lifetime of cultivation. By self-destructing the Jin Dan, it was equivalent to releasing all of one's lifetime of cultivation back into the world. How terrifying was that? Although Su Zimo, who was standing far away, was already out of danger, he could still sense the terrifying aura released the moment the Jin Dan self-destructed. Against that power, Meng Han was the first to be destroyed. Instantly, Meng Han's body turned into a blood mist without a corpse left. Immediately after, the gigantic hammer was sent flying back the way it came at an even faster speed with an even stronger force. The bearded man's eyes lit up. Taking a deep breath of air, he swung his other hammer and smashed it against the incoming hammer. Clang! The 2 hammers collided. There was an ear-piercing sound. The bearded man's bloodline rumbled and the muscles on his arms bulged like little snakes stuck to his skin. He managed to withstand the incoming hammer with brute force and did not retreat at all. Su Zimo nodded to himself. This meant that the bearded man was far stronger than Meng Han. Furthermore, it was clear from the bearded man's methods that he was a perfected Jin Dan who was proficient in body tempering techniques as well. The bearded man scooped up the hammers with his right hand and kept them in his storage bag. The curly-bearded man surveyed his surroundings and frowned when he saw the messy courtyard. Su Zimo walked over and cupped his fists. "Thank you for arriving in time to save me, sir. It's my duty." "It's nothing." The bearded man waved it off casually before cupping his fists casually. "I'm the commander of the Azure Falcon Guards, Mu Dongqing." "Greetings, Mr. Mo." The bearded man did not bother about trifles and revealed his true nature. Su Zimo had a good impression of him. The bearded man's gaze shifted to Liang Dan's corpse. Liang Dan was already beaten beyond recognition by Su Zimo and his original appearance could not be recognized. The bearded man squatted down and searched Liang Dan's body. After finding nothing, he took down the latter's storage bag and took a look before shaking his head. The bearded man said, "Just now, that person has already self-destructed and there's nothing left of his corpse. There's nothing on him and the storage bag is filled with useless items that can't prove his identity." Su Zimo smiled without saying anything. Chapter 267. Mr. Mo, the two of them are already dead and did not leave behind any evidence. I'm afraid tonight's incident. The bearded man did not continue, but the meaning behind his words was clear. In reality, it was not difficult to deduce the faction behind Meng Han and Liang Dan if one thought about it for a moment. However, without evidence, this matter would most likely be left unsettled. "It's fine," Su Zimo smiled indifferently and did not take it to heart. After losing two perfected Jin Dan for nothing tonight, the one who suffered was True Fire Weapon Workshop, not Su Zimo. The bearded man was about to turn and leave when he caught sight of the flying sword in Nian Chi's hands and his eyelids twitched. Supreme-grade flying sword. That maidservant was wielding a supreme-grade flying sword. Prior to this, the bearded man did not believe it when he heard that Mo Spirit Weapon Workshop could customize supreme-grade spirit weapons. Even though he addressed the other party as Mr. Mo, he did not think much of it. Customizing supreme-grade spirit weapons sounded way too far-fetched. However, when he caught sight of Su Zimo in person, the bearded man was even more convinced of his guess. Su Zimo was way too young and his cultivation realm was not high enough, he was only at Foundation Establishment realm. Typically speaking, the truly top weapon refinement masters were all perfected Jin Dan. Without enough years of weapon refinement, it was difficult for them to form their own unique perception of spirit gathering and naturally, they would not be able to become top weapon refinement masters. Even if Mo Ling started refining weapons in his mother's womb, he would only have a few decades at most. How could he compare to perfected Jin Dan who had hundreds of years of experience in weapon refinement? In the bearded man's opinion, Su Zimo must be truly capable for him to be able to make such a name for himself in the capital. However, if he said that he could customize supreme-grade spirit weapons, it would definitely be nonsense and was just a gimmick for his own weapon workshop. But now, when the bearded man caught sight of the supreme-grade flying sword in Nian Chi's hands, his heart began to waver. Could this Mo Ling truly be able to refine supreme-grade spirit weapons? But he's too young. He looks to be in his early 20s. How is that possible? But his maidservant already has a top-grade spirit weapon. What kind of treatment is this for an early-stage Foundation Establishment cultivator to use a top-grade spirit weapon? He's completely insane. The curly-bearded man stood still on the spot and stared at Nian Chi, who was not far away, with a hint of resentment in his eyes. For such a boorish man to reveal such a gaze, the little girl was scared to death. "Sir, are you all right?" Nian Chi asked in a low voice. "Ah." The bearded man froze for a moment and realized that he had lost his composure. Chuckling, he coughed gently and asked, "Mr. Mo, I heard that you can customize supreme-grade spirit weapons?" "Yes." Su Zimo nodded. The bearded man didn't expect Su Zimo to agree so readily. Could it be that this person could really customize supreme-grade spirit weapons? Well, what do I need to prepare if I want to customize a supreme-grade spirit weapon? The bearded man asked in a low voice. "Sir, I can't do it this month." Right then, Nian Chi spoke from the side. Nian Chi was the best at this aspect. For the past 2 years, she had been the one handling all the business for Mo's spirit weapon workshop. Nian Qi said, "Sir, you only refine a single supreme-grade spirit weapon every month. This opportunity was already auctioned off on the first day of the month. If you want to customize a supreme-grade spirit weapon, sir, you can only wait until the beginning of the next month. Bring 30 sets of materials and sufficient spirit stones to bid. Don't worry, sir. Mo's spirit weapon workshop is the fairest." With that said, Su Zimo had already entered the secret chamber for weapon refinement and vanished, leaving the bearded man standing on the spot with a dumbfounded expression. A long time later, the bearded man finally snapped back to his senses. Turning around, he looked at Nian Qi in disbelief and asked, "The morning you mentioned, Mr. Mo, is this morning?" "That's right." Nian Qi nodded. "Wait here for 6 hours and it'll be done." 6 hours is enough to refine a supreme-grade spirit weapon. I don't have to fast for 3 days, bathe, adjust my condition or pray to the heavens. Isn't that too perfunctory? The bearded man asked a bunch of questions in a single breath and Nian Qi was stunned speechless for a long time. When the bearded man saw that the young lady was confused as well, he said in a deep voice, "I won't say anything else but one thing. If Mr. Mo fails the spirit gathering," Nian Qi replied, "Young master won't fail." The bearded man. Chapter 268. Before long, a shadow appeared in the night sky and the sound of wings flapping could be heard. A large group of Azure Falcon Guards arrived. They were densely packed and covered the skies, almost surrounding Mo's spirit weapon workshop. "Greetings, Commander." Many Azure Falcon Guards rode on their gigantic Azure Falcons and cupped their fists at the same time, shouting in unison. Everyone swept their gazes across the courtyard and could not help but feel shocked at the tragic battlefield. The bearded man nodded and waved his hand. "Take this corpse away. You guys can leave first. I'll guard this place for the night to prevent any more bandits from coming to assassinate Mr. Mo." Understood. On the surface, many Azure Falcon Guards agreed. In reality, everyone was muttering in their hearts. Although Mo Ling's reputation had been flourishing in the capital in recent years, there was no need for the bearded man to guard this place personally as the commander of the Azure Falcon Guards. Now that the bearded man had taken such a stance, Mo Ling's status in everyone's hearts rose once more. Before long, the Azure Falcon Guards retreated. The only ones left in the courtyard were the bearded man, Nian Qi, and Night Spirit, who was sprawled in a corner with half-closed eyes, as though he was taking a nap. The wait was torturous. The bearded man's gaze was fixed on Su Zimo's secret chamber the entire time. He had never felt that a night could be so long. 6 hours passed in that silent night. When the sun rose and the clouds broke through the fog, the door to the secret chamber opened with a creak. Su Zimo strode out with a gigantic hammer in his hands. The bearded man bounced up from his chair and strode towards Su Zimo with an excited expression. When he arrived, the bearded man took the hammer from Su Zimo's hands and felt his arms sink. If he did not use all his strength, he would fall. The weight was sufficient. The bearded man nodded to himself. Focusing his gaze, the bearded man saw 4 patterns etched on the surface of the hammer that were intricate and beautiful. Could it be? The bearded man's eyes lit up as he channeled his Jin Dan and injected spirit energy. Swoosh! The hammer shone brightly and an aura as thick as the heavens and earth spread out. The 4 spirit patterns were dazzling. A supreme-grade spirit weapon. The bearded man was elated and could not conceal the excitement in his eyes. Bowing deeply to Su Zimo, he said sincerely, "Thank you, Mr. Mo." For Su Zimo, refining a supreme-grade spirit weapon was a piece of cake. However, in the eyes of the bearded man, this favor was way too great. The curly-bearded man said in a deep voice, "Don't worry, Mr. Mo. From today onwards, as long as it's my Azure Falcon Guards patrolling, I'll definitely walk around here more often. If I discover any abnormalities, I'll be able to rush over immediately." Su Zimo smiled and said, "Then I'll have to trouble you, sir." The next morning, The assassination attempt at Mo's spirit weapon workshop last night had already spread through the capital and caused a huge uproar. In this world, there was no wall that didn't have a crack. Moreover, it happened in the royal city. Last night, Mo's spirit weapon workshop shone with a dazzling formation light, illuminating the surroundings as though it was daytime and waking countless people up. Have you heard? I heard that perfected being Jean Dan tried to assassinate Mr. Mo last night but failed. Instead, he died at the banks of Jishui River. That's right. I heard that even the commander of the Azure Falcon Guards was alerted. I saw it with my own eyes. Some Azure Falcon Guards carried a corpse out. The corpse was beyond recognition and was completely dead, a cultivator said in a matter-of-fact manner. Some cultivators claimed to have seen Mr. Mo and even said that he was a Foundation establishment cultivator. Fufu, now it's clear that Mr. Mo is definitely perfected being Jean Dan. Otherwise, he wouldn't have survived the night. I've already said that Mr. Mo is perfected being Jean Dan. Otherwise, he wouldn't have been able to refine superior grade or even supreme grade spirit weapons. In the streets, alleys, taverns, teahouses and stalls, almost everyone was discussing this matter. In the palace, a middle-aged man in yellow robes leaned back on the dragon throne with a booklet that had just been presented before him. His gaze was deep and his broad forehead revealed his extraordinary intelligence. Behind the middle-aged man stood a scholarly man with a calm expression. His gaze was reserved and his cultivation was unfathomable. The yellow-robed man was the Emperor of Great Zhou. Not far in front of the Emperor of Great Zhou, an armored perfected being Jean Dan knelt on one knee. His face was dark and his beard was curly. He was the commander of the Azure Falcon Guards who saved Su Zimo last night. Earlier on, the curly-bearded man was summoned by the Emperor of Great Zhou for an audience and recounted everything that happened last night without hiding anything. In that case, Mo Ling can truly refine supreme-grade spirit weapons? The Emperor of Great Zhou closed his eyes and pondered for a moment before opening them. His gaze was bright as he asked slowly with a doubtful tone. Yes. The curly-bearded man replied, not only was he able to refine supreme-grade spirit weapons, he only used 6 hours. Furthermore, I feel that be it Mr. Mo or his maidservant, they are 100% confident in spirit gathering. 100% spirit gathering? The Emperor of Great Zhou murmured softly and narrowed his eyes. If that was the case, it would be enough to shock the entire cultivation world. Perfected Lord Mingzhe, what do you think? The Emperor of Great Zhou glanced sideways. The fact that he was addressed as a perfected lord meant that he was already at the nascent soul realm. The scholarly man standing behind him said, in Tianhuang mainland, the most skilled weapon refinement sects are 100 Refinement Sect. It's said that 100 Refinement Sect does have secret skills that can increase the success rate of spirit gathering. However, it's definitely impossible for it to be 100%. The Emperor of Great Zhou nodded. This person should have some sort of unique spirit gathering technique. Although he can't have a 100% success rate, the success rate is definitely extremely high. Fufu, not bad. This Mo Ling is quite something. The Emperor of Great Zhou smiled and nodded slightly with a hint of admiration in his eyes. Your Majesty, are you tempted by this talent? Perfected Lord Mingzhe asked with a smile. That's right. The Emperor of Great Zhou said, after a while, I'll find some time to head to Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop to meet this person. Perfected Lord Mingzhe frowned slightly and advised, Your Majesty, you're the Emperor. Even if this lad is someone important, it's not worth it for you to take the initiative to meet him. Just summon him to the capital. Furthermore, even if this person can refine supreme-grade spirit weapons, he's only a weapon refinement master. As long as his cultivation isn't at nascent soul realm, he won't be able to refine dermic weapons and naturally won't be able to become a weapon refinement master. Reaching nascent soul realm meant that a cultivator had taken another important step in their path of cultivation. When the Jean Dan was perfected, it meant that the path of core formation had come to an end. The Jean Dan was born in the Dantian, round and golden like a placenta. Only by shattering the Jin Dan could the infant within be born successfully and achieve a breakthrough in his cultivation realm, obtaining a new life. And this infant was the so-called nascent soul in the world of cultivation. That was the reason why there was a saying in the cultivation world about the birth of a nascent soul after shattering the core. Janine Jinjuan had completely broken away from the scope of spirit energy and was beginning to control another type of power, dermic power. It was a power that was even stronger and more terrifying than spirit energy. The so-called dermic arts could only be released by Janine Jinjuan. As for Janine Jinjuan's weapons, they were dermic weapons. In the world of weapon refinement, only cultivators who could refine dermic weapons could be called weapon refinement masters. That was the reason why perfected Lord Mingzai said bluntly that Su Zimo was still unable to refine dermic weapons due to the limitations of his cultivation realm and was not worthy of the Emperor of Great Zhou's high regard to meet him. Although there was no mention of Mo Ling's name in the notice, anyone could tell that the virtuous talent in the notice was Mo Ling, given the fact that the assassination attempt had just taken place last night. On the surface, this assassination attempt seemed to be a conflict between two major crafting workshops. However, in reality, it was a conflict between Mo Ling and True Fire's sect. Under normal circumstances, True Fire sect was one of the 5 major sects and possessed immense power with a strong foundation. The Emperor of Great Zhou would turn a blind eye to this matter if he did not express his stance. However, the moment the notice was posted, it was a clear indication of his stance. The Emperor of Great Zhou's stance towards this matter. The Emperor of Great Zhou had chosen Mo Ling's side. Seems like your majesty really thinks highly of this person, perfected Lord Mingzai thought to himself. The bearded man thought for a moment and asked again, where should I post this notice? The emperor replied indifferently, Yongqing City, at the entrance of True Fire Weapon Workshop. Psst. The bearded man sucked in a breath of cold air. This was no longer a mere statement, it was a warning. A warning to True Fire Weapon Workshop not to act rashly in the future. Although the emperor did not state the matter explicitly out of respect for True Fire sect, his intention was clear enough by choosing to post the notice at the entrance of True Fire Weapon Workshop. Yongqing City. Ever since Su Zimo started customizing supreme-grade spirit weapons, the weapon workshops here regained their liveliness and the number of people increased gradually. After all, supreme-grade spirit weapons were out of reach for most cultivators. If they wanted to refine inferior grade, middle grade and superior grade spirit weapons, they would have to come here. Actually, True Fire Weapon Workshop isn't doing the right thing. Although nobody knew the identities of the 2 dead perfected Jin Dan, most cultivators were well aware. In the capital, True Fire Weapon Workshop was the only one that was at odds with most Spirit Weapon Workshop and had the ability to order perfected Jin Dan around. That's right. We're also a weapon workshop and are competitors with most Spirit Weapon Workshop. But then again, there's nothing wrong with them establishing their reputation with their own capabilities. Furthermore, Mr. Mo is now in the business of supreme-grade spirit weapons. There's no conflict with us. The shopkeepers of the weapon forging workshop gathered together and discussed in low voices. I reckon that this matter will most likely be left unsettled. Furthermore, there's no evidence left. Yes, True Fire Weapon Workshop represents one of the 5 major sects, True Fire Sect. There's no way the Great Zhou dynasty will offend a major sect for a single weapon refinement master. In my opinion, this matter isn't over yet. One of the shopkeeper's words were shocking. Old Zhang, what do you mean? Another person asked. Old Zhang sneered, think about it. True Fire Weapon Workshop lost 2 perfected Jin Dan and suffered a huge setback. How can they tolerate that? If they can't tolerate it, what else can they do? They can't possibly send Janine Jinjuan to do it, right? Another person was shocked. That's hard to say. As the few of them discussed together, a figure tore through the skies not far away. It was extremely fast and arrived before them in the blink of an eye. Greetings, sir. The few shopkeepers stood up hurriedly and greeted. The person who had arrived was the commander of the Azure Falcon Guards, the bearded man. Someone asked with a smile, "Sir, why are you here? Do you want to customize a spirit weapon?" The bearded man did not reply. Waving his sleeves, a thick spirit energy enveloped a tall note of steel and lifted it off the ground. The bearded man was expressionless and said nothing as he walked forward with the note of steel, attracting countless gazes. Chapter 270. True Fire Weapon Forging Workshop, Rear Hall. Elder Zhang didn't sleep the entire night. This night was too torturous for him. He had failed. The assassination that had been planned for so long had actually failed. Although Liang Dan and Meng Han were nearing the end of their lifespans, they were still perfected Jin Dan after all. Elder Zhang could not take this lying down. Not only did this concern the rise and fall of True Fire Weapon Workshop, it also concerned True Fire Sect's reputation. The shopkeeper of True Fire Weapon Workshop, Guyong, walked into the back hall. When he saw Elder Zhang's soulless expression, he could not help but sigh inwardly. He went forward and advised, "Elder Zhang, you should rest for a while. Almost an entire day has passed. News of what happened last night has spread, right?" After a while, Elder Zhang's lips moved as he asked. Guyong nodded with an ugly expression. Elder Zhang's face was filled with hostility. He slowly clenched his fist and said hatefully, "Even if you don't say it, I can guess it. The people outside must be rejoicing in our misfortune, laughing at our True Fire sect. Guyong, let me tell you, I didn't lose. True Fire Weapon Workshop didn't lose either. True Fire sect won't lose either." Guyong saw that Elder Zhang seemed to have been stimulated too much and had already fallen into a deranged state. He hurriedly said, "Elder Zhang, things have already come to this, you..." Elder Zhang interrupted Guyong and said coldly, "I'll send a message to the sect and get them to send even stronger cultivators over. We must kill Mo Ling in the capital." Guyong vaguely felt that Elder Zhang had lost his mind, but he couldn't say it out loud. He could only say tactfully, "This is a serious matter. The sect may not agree, right?" "The sect will definitely agree. When had True Fire sect ever suffered such a loss? How could he be frightened by a little artificer of unknown origin?" With a cold snort, Elder Zhang continued, "After 2 years of observation, I dare to conclude that Mo Ling has definitely mastered a unique spirit-gathering technique with an extremely high success rate. After killing Mo Ling, this spirit-gathering technique naturally belongs to our True Fire sect. But last night's incident has alarmed the Azure Falcon Guards. I'm sure the Emperor of Great Zhou already knows about this. It's not good for us to make a move in the capital, is it?" Guyong frowned slightly. "Don't worry." Elder Zhang replied, "The Emperor of Great Zhou will definitely not interfere in this matter out of respect for True Fire sect." Rumble. Just as Elder Zhang finished speaking, an earth-shattering sound came from outside the door, as if a meteorite had fallen and smashed right at the entrance of True Fire Weapon Workshop. Elder Zhang frowned slightly. He waved his hand and said, "Go take a look and see what's going on outside. I'll write a letter right away." "Yes." Guyong turned around and left. With a dark expression, Elder Zhang took out a letter from his storage bag and scribbled furiously. Not long after Guyong left, he panted and ran into the back hall with a panicked expression. Elder Zhang picked up the letter he had just written and shook the ink off. He handed it to Guyong and said, "Send this letter back to the sect as soon as possible." Guyong did not take it. His face was pale, and he wanted to say something but hesitated. What happened outside?" Elder Zhang asked with a frown. Guyong smiled bitterly, "Elder Zhang, you should go out and take a look yourself." Holding the letter in his left hand, Elder Zhang strode out of the door with a grim expression. Before he reached the entrance, Elder Zhang heard a commotion outside True Fire Weapon Workshop, as though countless people had gathered and were discussing fervently. This time round, True Fire Weapon Workshop has truly suffered a huge setback. That's right, it's utterly embarrassing. It's a crushing defeat. I wonder who came up with the idea to assassinate Mr. Mo. That person should be the greatest sinner of True Fire sect. A series of chaotic voices could be heard and Elder Zhang's expression turned increasingly terrible. The moment he stepped out of the door of True Fire Weapon Workshop, the commotion outside quietened down significantly. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. Everyone turned their heads and looked at Elder Zhang with a strange look in their eyes as they whispered to each other. Elder Zhang looked around. In the end, his gaze landed on a tall notice stone tablet opposite him. There was a brand new notice pasted on it. If there are any more thieves who dare to plot against the capital and assassinate talents, they will be killed without mercy. The mastermind behind them will not be able to escape death as well. It was a murderous sentence. At the end of the notice was a square pattern. It was the Emperor's Jade Seal. When he saw that sentence and the pattern of the Emperor's Jade Seal, Elder Zhang felt as though he was struck by lightning. Feeling dizzy, his body swayed and he nearly fell. Guiyong hurried forward to support Elder Zhang. After a moment, Elder Zhang took a deep breath of air and looked at the bearded man at the side, asking with difficulty, "May I ask, Lord Commander, is this notice truly the will of the king?" "What do you mean by that, Elder Zhang? Are you suspecting that I'm faking the will of the Emperor?" The bearded man asked expressionlessly. Elder Zhang's heart skipped a beat as he replied hurriedly, "No, I'm not." The bearded man harumphed coldly and turned to point at the jade stream pattern at the end of the notice, saying in a deep voice, "The Emperor's Jade Seal has always been in the hands of the king. How dare you question it, Then why is the notice pasted here?" Before Elder Zhang could finish, he was interrupted by the bearded man. "The reason why it's pasted here is to tell those with ill intentions that under the feet of the Emperor of Great Zhou, even tigers had better crouch and dragons had better coil up. Don't even think about stirring up trouble." With every sentence that the bearded man said, Elder Zhang's face turned paler by a shade. In the end, Elder Zhang's gaze dimmed and he was completely disheartened. The letter that he had just written in his hands was also pulverized by his spirit energy. That letter was no longer useful. That was because not only had the Emperor of Great Zhou expressed his stance, he had even issued a stern warning to True Fire Weapon Workshop. If True Fire Weapon Workshop attacked Mo Ling again, they would not be offending anyone else, but the current Emperor of Great Zhou. With the notice pasted here, even some of the cultivators who were still in the dark realized that the mastermind behind the assassination last night was True Fire Weapon Workshop. It was truly a crushing defeat. Elder Zhang let out a long sigh and seemed to have aged instantly. Turning around, he entered True Fire Weapon Workshop with a lonely back view. For a moment, Elder Zhang regretted it. Perhaps, he should not have been blinded by greed and chose to assassinate Mo Ling back then. It was still noon and True Fire Weapon Workshop was closed long ago. Everyone dispersed one after another. However, the discussion about this matter did not die down. "Your Majesty is too much. Since the notice is already pasted at their door, he should just make it clear. What do you know?" True Fire Weapon Workshop represents True Fire Sect, one of the 5 major sections. They have been established for many years and their foundation is there. Even the Emperor of Great Zhou has to give them face. If they were to make it clear, it would be equivalent to falling out with True Fire Sect. There's no need for that. One of the cultivators laughed. This notice is interesting. It doesn't mention True Fire Weapon Workshop or Mr. Mo at all. However, even a fool can tell what it's referring to. That's right. Your Majesty is just short of saying that Mr. Mo will be under my protection in the capital from now on. From today onwards, I'm afraid no one in the capital will dare to target Mr. Mo anymore. Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop will also become an unshakable existence in the capital. Chapter 271. Mo's Spirit Weapon Workshop. Su Zimo walked out of his room and squinted at the blazing noon sun in the skies. The fatigue in his eyes dissipated gradually. Su Zimo's body shuddered and a series of crackling sounds could be heard from within his body. It was as though someone was frying beans as his tendons and bones rang together and his blood surged like a tsunami. Swoosh! Su Zimo opened his mouth and spat out a long stream of white chi that was condensed into a sword. It shot out a few meters before dissipating. In the myths and legends of the people, immortals could soar through the clouds and spit out flying swords to behead their enemies from 1,000 miles away. What happened earlier was extremely similar to the spitting of flying swords in the legends. If mortals who did not know how to cultivate were to witness this, they would probably be scared half to death. In reality, that stream of white chi was not a flying sword. It was only because Su Zimo's organs had strengthened after he cultivated the organs refinement section that there was the strange sight of him spitting out swords. Of course, that stream of white chi did not have any lethality, let alone behead an enemy from 1,000 miles away. After the assassination attempt last night and the refinement of a supreme-grade spirit weapon for the bearded man, Su Zimo did not sleep for the entire night and was mentally drained. He had rested for the entire morning and had just woken up. The injuries on his arm were healed and his mental state was as good as new. Su Zimo had just sat down on a stone bench in the courtyard when the door was pushed open. Nian Qi entered with a stick of candied fruits in her mouth. She was smiling as though she had encountered something fun. "Young master, you're awake." When Nian Qi caught sight of Su Zimo, her eyes sparkled as she called out. Su Zimo nodded and asked with a smile, "What happened?" "Look at how you're smiling." "Hee, I can't hide anything from you, young master." Nian Qi ran over with a smile and sat at the side. In 2 years, Nian Qi had changed tremendously, and it was not only in her cultivation realm. 2 years ago, when Nian Qi had just moved in, Su Zimo could sense that the lass was still extremely wary of him. As time passed, this kind of vigilance became less and less. Nian Qi also gradually became more cheerful and lively. Nian Qi said mysteriously, "Young master, guess what I saw in Yongqing City just now? Is it related to what happened last night?" Su Zimo raised his eyebrows and asked. Nian Qi's eyes widened as he nodded repeatedly. He then vividly described the emperor's announcement. "Young master, you didn't see the expression of that elder from True Fire Weapon Workshop." "Humph, how satisfying." Su Zimo's eyes flashed with surprise. He did not expect the emperor of the Great Zhou dynasty to express his stance at this moment. "Young master, all the cultivators in Monarch City are talking about this. They all say that Mr. Mo can do whatever he wants in Monarch City from now on." Nian Qi imitated the tone of the people around him and spoke in a coarse voice. It was quite comical. Su Zimo smiled. Clang! 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 Right then, a series of knocks sounded from the door. Su Zimo and Li Wuyo exchanged glances in confusion. It was already the middle of the month, and if they wanted to customize supreme-grade spirit weapons, they would have to wait until the beginning of next month. Why would anyone come at this time? Nian Qi ran over and opened the door. 2 cultivators stood at the door. One of them was a middle-aged man in yellow robes. He had a broad forehead, deep eyes, and an extraordinary aura. The other person was more refined, and his white robes fluttered as he stood half a step behind the former. Nian Qi frowned to himself. Her spirit-peering art could not detect their cultivation realms at all. There were only 2 possibilities. Firstly, the 2 of them had cultivated some sort of cultivation technique that concealed their cultivation realms. Secondly, their cultivation realms had already surpassed Jin Dan realm and were at nascent soul realm. The second possibility was eliminated by Nian Qi right away. As Jining Jinjuan, there was no reason for him to come here. Although Su Zimo could refine supreme-grade spirit weapons, he could not catch Jining Jinjuan's attention. "Fellow Taoists, why are you here today?" Nian Qi stood at the door and blocked the 2 of them. The yellow-robed man at the front smiled. "Young lady, this isn't how you treat your guests. You're blocking us from talking. What is it that you can't say outside?" Nian Qi tilted her head and asked seriously. The 2 of them at the door looked at each other speechlessly and helplessly. The yellow-robed man smiled. "Young lady, I'm here today because of your reputation. I'd like to meet Mr. Mo and ask for his help in refining a supreme-grade spirit weapon. No, before the yellow-robed man could finish, he was interrupted by Nian Qi. Nian Qi said, "My young master only refines a single supreme-grade spirit weapon every month and will hold an auction at the beginning of the month. If you want to customize a supreme-grade spirit weapon, you'll have to come and bid at the beginning of next month." The yellow-robed man froze for a moment. For a long time, no one had dared to interrupt him and shut him out. A hint of anger flashed in the eyes of the elegant man behind him. He frowned slightly and said in a slightly reproachful tone, "Girl, you, The yellow-robed man glanced sideways and stopped the scholarly man. Turning around, the yellow-robed man smiled. "Young lady, tell me. What was the highest bid for a supreme-grade spirit weapon at the beginning of the month?" Nian Qi blurted out without thinking, 2 million superior-grade spirit stones. "All right," the yellow-robed man nodded. "I'll pay double the price and ask Mr. Mo to help me refine a supreme-grade spirit weapon in private." 4 million. Nian Qi was shocked. That was a frightening number. Most perfected Jin Dan cultivators would not be able to fork out that much. Unable to make up his mind, Nian Qi looked towards Su Zimo in the courtyard instinctively. Su Zimo had a calm expression as he sipped his tea leisurely. Putting down his teacup, he nodded. "Let them in." Nian Qi made way in a flash and the two of them entered Mo's spirit weapon workshop. The moment they entered the courtyard, the yellow-robed man's gaze landed on Su Zimo and he nodded in greeting with a strange glint in his eyes. "Sit." Su Zimo did not stand up either as he pointed to the stone bench opposite him and said. The yellow-robed man sat down while the scholarly man stood at the side and surveyed the surroundings. His gaze paused on Night Spirit for a brief moment as his gaze flickered. Su Zimo looked at the yellow-robed man and asked in a seemingly casual manner, "How should I address you, fellow Taoist?" "My surname is Zhou." The yellow-robed man's expression did not change. Su Zimo nodded without saying anything. The yellow-robed man smiled gently and asked, "I've heard a lot about you, Mr. Mo. May I know which sect you're from and who your master is with your weapon refinement skills?" Su Zimo raised his head and toyed with the teacup in his hands. He looked at the yellow-robed man with a fake smile and asked instead, "Fellow Taoist, don't you want to refine weapons? What's your motive for asking about my background now?" "You're overthinking, Mr. Mo. I was just curious and asked instinctively." The yellow-robed man's expression was normal, as though it was truly a casual question. The yellow-robed man nodded to the scholarly man beside him. The scholarly man took out 30 sets of weapon refinement materials and 4 million superior-grade spirit weapons from his storage bag, placing them in front of Su Zimo. "You're tuning into the Passion Pages YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.